West Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't agree with that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk.
Monday, June 2nd, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. Heavy hearts this morning. A weekly demonstration in support of Israeli hostages erupted into chaos in Boulder, Colorado yesterday afternoon when a man using what was described as a makeshift flamethrower by officials attacked a group quietly marching down a pedestrian mall. The group, a familiar one in Boulder, this is the New York Times reporting, by the way, had walked through downtown regularly since late 2023 to remind the community of the hostages taken by Hamas in the October 7th terrorist attack in Israel. They often wear red, speak the names of the hostages, and sometimes sing, and they agree to return the next Sunday, same time, same place. The ritual was shattered when a man later identified as Mohammed Sabri Solomon, 45 years old, yelled, "Free Palestine!" and threw an incendiary device into the crowd, what they think was a Molotov cocktail. Within moments, smoke and screams filled the air. Victims fell to the ground. Others tried to put out the flames with discarded clothes. The incident intensified fears as the latest attack on the Jewish community. I mean, they're shooting them in broad daylight and lighting Jews on fire at this point. I mean, this is just terrible. This is the Free Press pointing out that this is the culmination of what Bill and I have been talking about, because we covered the Palestinian protests at the DNC for 4 days. And it was a coming together of just jihadism and then the kind of leftist Marxist college campus crowd. And you've literally seen those two attacks here in the last 10 days. You had the shooting outside of Washington, D.C., or outside of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. That was carried out by kind of a college lefty. And then yesterday's attack by a Muslim, Mohammed Solomon, yelling "Free Palestine." So we're going to be covering a lot of this today. We're going to hear from local Jewish leaders, including Joy Hoffman, Ron Weinberg, State Representative Ron Weinberg, Steve Reams, Weld County Sheriff, very critical of the Chief of Police in Boulder. He's going to join us in the 7 o'clock hour. We're going to hear from religious leaders as well as experts from the Institute of World Politics about what's happening. It's important to note that many Jews are celebrating a 2-day holiday right now. So what kicked off last night for 48 hours is a 2-day holiday where many of them aren't available for comment to speak on this as a result of their religious requirements. So many of the regular Jewish voices you may be wanting to hear from, you may not hear from until Wednesday. I think Tuesday nights when those religious restrictions are lifted. So we'll be covering this attack all morning. Want to hear from you, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115, 720-819-5115. So many angles to talk about on this particular issue. Ross Kaminsky yesterday, friend on a different station, but he posted right after the attack to my fellow Jews, buy a gun for concealed carry. Buy a gun for your home. Get training so you're proficient with each. My goodness. I mean, I think he's exactly right. Jews need to arm themselves at this point. You've been shot in broad daylight or lit on fire. And what do the Democrats need to do to confront this? growing anti-Semitism is taking place in their own party. When you look at the response, it was pathetic yesterday. We condemn hate. Condemn hate. Little quotation marks around hate. This was a jihadist. And you got to get them the hell out of this country at this point. They should be supporting Donald Trump's efforts to boot him out. It's unbelievable. All right, let's go now to the latest on these attacks. News and update with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning. It is Monday, 54 and mostly clear in Denver. Expecting a high of 82 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story.
The woman who was on the ground bleeding out. Oh my gosh, sorry. And then there are two other women whose calves were burned from the fire.
The terrorist who attacked innocent victims at the park on Pearl Street in Boulder on Sunday is facing charges. He's an illegal alien from Egypt who overstayed his visa. These young people witnessed the attack.
And so I just ran over to stay with them and make sure that they didn't lose too much blood from their legs.
And there was a woman that was burning on the ground. And then we noticed two other people that had also been affected by the burns on their legs. And this man was shirtless and was yelling with some kind of accent and was threatening to burn people.
45-year-old Mohammed Solomon is in custody after setting his victims on fire with a makeshift flamethrower. At least 8 people were wounded, ages 67 to 88. At least 2 were airlifted to CU's UC Health Hospital for treatment of severe burns. It took place during a weekly gathering of individuals, as Jeff just talked about, walking together to demonstrate solidarity with hostages still held in Gaza by Hamas.
The FBI is processing the crime scene and the subject vehicle and interviewing key witnesses. We're assisting Boulder police in providing technical, analytic, and additional forensic resources. As a result of these preliminary facts, it is clear that this is a targeted act of violence, and the FBI is investigating this as an act of terrorism. Sadly, attacks like this are becoming too common across the country. This is an example of how perpetrators of violence continue to threaten communities across our nation. It's our job, the FBI, the Boulder police, and our law enforcement and community partners, to bring these criminals to justice and keep our communities safe.
That's the FBI acting director, agent in charge. AG Phil Weiser said he's offered state resources to Boulder's DA to help in the investigation and prosecution of any suspects. Governor Polis said he was closely monitoring the situation, calling the attack a heinous act of terror. The governor also ordered more security at Jewish places of worship in Colorado. White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security Advisor Stephen Miller said in a statement on X that the suspect was granted a tourist visa by the Biden administration and then illegally overstayed that visa. He went on to say that the Biden administration gave the man a work permit. What a shocker there. A teenage girl is dead and one is suffering from serious injuries after a shooting in Aurora. Aurora police said a third victim was grazed by a bullet. It happened Sunday near Hoffman Park at a fire station parking lot. Police are investigating. Democrats are slamming DJT's proposed health care bill, warning it could cost lives. PBS always has a fake conservative on there, fake conservative David Brooks on PBS.
There's folks at Boston University who count how many people have died because of what Doge did at USAID. And USAID was a very ill-managed organization. That's true. But according to the Boston University folks, So far, 55,000 adults have died of AIDS in the 4 months since Trump was elected. 6,000 children are dead because of what a Doge did. That's just PEPFAR, the HIV. You add them all up, that's 300,000 dead, and we're 4 months in. Now, you accumulate that over 4 years, the number of dead grows very high. There are mass murderers in the world, Pol Pot, Mao Zedong, Stalin. We don't have anybody on the list for America. And I don't think it's the same as committing the kind of genocide they did. But by taking away that agency and being at least semi-responsible for the deaths of probably by the end of this hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, that's Elon Musk's legacy. And the people who work at Tesla and SpaceX might want to think about that.
Yeah. Elon is close to Pol Pot. Wow.
I mean,
Boston U, they're just competing with Harvard.
Every dollar you cut, they run off and do that. That's Democrats. I mean, you've seen it with Jason Crow, Brittany Pedersen, all the stuff that somehow any dollar cut is. I saw somebody sent this to me of Jobs Corps. Okay, Jobs Corps is this program that basically, if you can't finish high school, it's going to help you learn a trade. All right, and the progressives were running around going, well, if you cut Job Corps, all of these people that are in the foster care system are going to die as a result of not being able to get jobs. Job Corps spends $155,000 per person to train them, and the average income that a person who comes through Job Corps earns, $16,000 a year. You're spending $155,000 to train these people, and they're making $16,000 a year. It is, but anytime you try to cut from the government, it is people dying in the streets.
Yes,
it is. It's just ridiculous.
It's a lie. They're liars. 47's big, beautiful bill faces uncertainty in the Senate. The multi-trillion-dollar tax and spending package narrowly passed the House, and the Senate will take up the measure this week. DJT is set to meet with Germany's new chancellor at the White House this Thursday. It is June, and that could only mean one or two things. Probably the most important, it's wedding month in our beautiful country, and summer really kicks off today for almost everyone. Swimming pools, lemonade stands, American flags. Hey, that's what June is all about.
It's pride. My pride is in the American flag.
Yes, it is.
It
is. There you go. Absolutely. Absolutely it is. This is Americana, June. Red, white, and blue, stars and stripes.
That's right.
Heterosexual marriage. I love it. Okay. News brought to you by Lair Fireplace and Patio, Denver's premier source for everything fireplace, patio, and grills, locally owned and operated since 1954, online at lairfireplacepatio.com. Rockies fall to the Mets 5-3. In case you've lost track, the Rockies are 9-50 in Miami today. First pitch at 4:40. 53 in Greenwood Village, 51 in North Glen, and 54 in Denver.
I got to tell you, I'm starting to get a little bit of admiration for the folks that own the Rockies.
Yeah,
if you can deal with this much heat and shrug,
yes,
God love you.
Yeah, just don't read it. Don't look at it. Just throw away your smartphones,
worst
and
baseball team,
television
history, and still earn more than we spent.
Till they stop coming. Keep on doing the same thing. I'm great business people.
I'm starting to become pretty impressed with them.
I am. I'm right there with you. I mean, if you can do that, and people just flood in, despite the record, why not? I am right there with you. Hey, it is Monday, and Jeff and Billy continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Your 7:10 5-day forecast here in Denver on this early Monday. Partly cloudy skies with a temperature around 60 degrees by daybreak. For the rest of your Monday, partly sunny skies with showers and thunderstorms likely. Some of those could be heavy. Highs around 80. Showers and storms continuing tonight with lows in the lower 50s. Tuesday and Wednesday, showers and storms, highs in the 60s to low 70s. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. I'm meteorologist Patrice Sutter in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Heartbreaking morning here in Colorado. 8 burned in attack at Colorado event honoring Israeli hostages. 2 victims were airlifted to a burn unit with serious injuries, and a suspect was in custody. Officials said he used a makeshift flamethrower. It looks like it was one of those weed sprayers, Bill, and then he lit them on fire.
Jeez, that's awful.
I mean, so there's so much to talk about on this today. The guys here illegally, how the Democrat leaders are responding, how they're dealing with anti-Semitism within their own party. We're going to get to all of that. But I want to bring up and I want to hear especially from Jewish folks here in Colorado. If you're listening, many of them are on a 48-hour holiday right now, and in Jewish holidays, they remove themselves from technology and political engagement and all that stuff, spend their time worshiping God, and so we may not hear from many of them, but if you are Jewish out there, would love to hear from you. Give us a call, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. It was a week ago today that I ran the Boulder. And you remember we talked about this? Throughout
we did.
The race, it was chanting Free Palestine in Boulder. And look, I'm not talking about those that are critiquing specific Israeli operations, right? And nobody's immune from critique. If there's a military exercise that results in the death of innocent people, it should absolutely be critiqued. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about those folks, and I've interviewed them. I've spent time with them at the DNC protests. I saw them down in Denver. I see them when I ran the Boulder. This contingent of people that don't believe that Israel should have its own homeland. And Free Palestine is a chant against Zionism. It's not a critique of a military operation. It's not going, hey guys, can we find a different way to peace, that type of thing. It's a broader worldview chant to remove Israel and the Zionist oppressors from the Middle East. I saw it the entirety of the race. An hour and 20 minutes I ran. The 10K, yes, I recognize that's pretty slow, but that's because we stopped everywhere. But this stuff's been building. I mean, it just operates out there. And the guy that shot the people in Washington, D.C. chanted Free Palestine. Yesterday, Bill, I think you have some of the audio. Do you want to play some of the audio of this?
Oh, yeah.
yesterday?
Here we've got, this is going to be just part of the attack. So what you're looking for here is it's going to run about 35 seconds, but about 20 seconds in, this is someone's video. So you're going to hear the people talking are going to be louder than the guy yelling and screaming. But you're going to hear him about 20 seconds in yell about freeing Palestine and then yelling about the fact that we have to take some sort of action. And then we cut it off before people start cursing at him.
We're here, brother. We're here. We can't do nothing about that. We can't do nothing. We can. Not here. You have to end Zionists. Not here, bro. You're not.
He won't take the video right now. He was wearing an orange suit with like something on his back.
Spraying alcohol.
Spraying alcohol, but what he did was he made it look like he was here.
He's making Molotov cocktails.
Yeah, there he is. Where he said
Well, we
Palestine
can't
is
do it.
free.
He's got Molotov cocktails on
If you are fighting, you have to.
That's what he's got right here. Is Molotov alcohol.
So that's his voice in the background. You hear him yelling at the beginning in the background, but it's harder because everybody else that is closer to the microphone overrides what he's yelling at. But basically, he's just yelling to free Palestine and telling people to take
and
action.
Zionists. He keeps at the beginning there.
Yeah.
He keeps yelling and Zionists.
Yeah, and Zionists. Yeah. So that's the part two. So yeah, that's what we've got. And we've got a little bit from Chief Redfern yesterday as well, but just a little bit that just gives some background, not necessarily important, but just says, hey, guy attacked. It was attacked with fire. People were injured, and then we arrested him. I mean, it's nothing as far as anything any deeper than that. But those are two things. I just thought it was interesting to pull out. There's going to be some questions about what he was chanting and what he was saying and motivations, but that was the piece that I think most succinctly gave the idea and the mindset of the guy that did the attacks.
It seems like this guy's from Colorado Springs. So the guy, and when he's arrested in the video, originally from Egypt.
Yeah, originally Egypt.
Living in Colorado Springs illegally, overstays his visa, then drives to Boulder. And all the footage I've seen so far, he's shirtless. So something happened to where he rips off his shirt. Because he said, if you listen to the lady, he was dressed in orange. He was dressed in orange. And then all the videos I've seen, he's shirtless and he's holding 2 Molotov cocktails in his hands.
Yeah. If I had to guess, the fact that it's a homemade flamethrower, he might have caught his shirt on fire. I'm just getting, or got it wet.
Yeah, those
whatever the fuel
idiot
is.
arsonists always end up.
So I'm guessing
burning themselves.
Yeah, if I had to guess about that one, I don't think he went all Hulk Hogan and said, I'm going to run wild all over. No, okay, yeah, I'm being silly, but still, I don't think he did anything like that. My guess is that he took it off because of something went wrong with his incendiary device, and it was weird. Yeah, it was bizarre. But yeah, he's running around shirtless, and that is a good point that he had to make the trek to Boulder. The other thing I thought was interesting is this was not a large or unusual gathering. And what I mean by that is...
there's like 6 people there.
Yeah, and this is something that happens on the regular. It's been happening every weekend. Yeah. That's weird to me because you would assume that something like, the large gathering of something like the Bernie and AOC people downtown, a large gathering of protesters, because of that being unusual, it normally attracts more people wanting to cause trouble and violence. But this was something that they say at most over the course of the weekends, they've had 30 people. At their high point, they've had 30, and they didn't have that yesterday.
And every one of the victims was over the age of 60.
Yeah. And so that's the idea of why this, why here, why now? Because again, not a lot of people, something that's been going on regularly, and why is this?
And
the
this
pain
guy goes
point
from Colorado Springs to Boulder, which is like a 2-hour drive at least.
Yep. So he had to plan, he had to make his stuff, and had to go because he's not buying that stuff in Boulder and then making it there, because you're going to make that stuff at home and then put it in your car because you don't want to have people seeing you.
Somebody
mix the
must have told him about it. He had to have learned about this online.
Or just saw it. But even then, even then though, this is happening regularly, and when you show up and there's like less than 30 people, wow. This is I do think we're going to find something else in his background as well, as far as triggering why he crossed the line into violence rather than just screaming like you were talking about at the Boulder. There were a lot of people that were yelling things and phrases and slogans that this attacker may actually agree with, but none of them were trying to light anybody on fire or getting violent. So where was that line crossed for him? Where did he feel that violence is now necessary?
My question is, have we been building towards this kind of global intifada? You're now at a point where both efforts to kill people were shouting "Free Palestine." And are we now, and should we be at a point where people look at that phrase as a call to violence and condemn it as such? Like, I was looking back at my phone. I only recorded it once because I didn't want to spend, I'm with my boys and we're running. I didn't want to be doing the whole political thing the whole time. But same phrase, "Free Palestine," big sign. Is Free Palestine a call to violent action?
I don't know. See, I look at it a different way. I look at it that our society has started, we talked about it a little bit last week, our society has started to accept violence as speech. On both sides of the aisle, if we disagree with someone, we have leaned towards the idea of violence. We have leaned towards the idea of intimidation, that if you don't do what I want, if you're not going to do this, then I am going to threaten you. And I know that people don't like this, but let's talk about the litany of death threats to judges that were overseeing Trump trials. There were death threats to those judges. So that's what I am worried about, is that we believe that at times violence is equated to our free speech rights. And I do believe that there is a segment of our society that believes they are getting so frustrated, violence is the only answer. That if they're not going to listen to my words, then they damn well are going to listen to my fists, my Molotov cocktails, my guns, my car when I drive it into the big crowd of people, whatever it is, I'm going to make them listen to me. That's where I'm really worried about this. That's where I see this going.
Join the conversation. Give us a call, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Campus Law text line at 720-819-5115. Let's talk L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. Went out and met with the folks there at their operation. This is a wonderful family-run company. And when our air conditioner went out last summer, we did the research, talked to a number of different HVAC companies, all had them out to the Hunt Family Ranch, and chose the best, L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. They absolutely nailed it. In a single day, they reinstalled a new furnace and air conditioner for us. There's no stress, personal service from start to finish. They followed up to make sure everything was perfect. Our home, totally comfortable no matter what the weather. And with the L&L Heating and Air Conditioning, we even got peace of mind. Here are their deals right now. Free programmable thermostat or carbon monoxide detector with new furnace or air conditioner installation. No emergency charges. A $0 trip fee. Price match value guarantee on equipment. Free estimates. Licensed and insured, and a 5-year labor warranty. Everything works great. Our family couldn't be happier. So if you're looking for fast, honest, reliable service, owned not by some big corporation, but a mom and pop operation, I highly recommend L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. They get it done, bring quality and service to you. Here's their phone number, 720-851-1691, 720-851-1691, online at bestdenverhvac.com, bestdenverhvac.com. I'm sure glad we called him. That number again, 720-851-1691. We're going to talk with local Jewish leaders coming up. Joy Hoffman's next. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS. Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. This is News Talk 710 KNUS. You know, Mondays just seem to not like you sometimes. Yeah, we got that here at the radio station. Our phone system has decided to go. Yeah, so our phone system.
We're going to bring it in via speaker, but we do have Joy Hoffman with us. Joy's a local Jewish leader. She was the chairwoman of the Arapahoe County Republican Party for many years. Joy, first of all, I'm so sorry for what Jews are having to deal with, not only in Colorado, but across this country. This is anti-Semitism in ways that we only read about in history books, things that I think our grandparents had to deal with, but it's come back. Joy, can you give us a little insight into how the Jewish community is feeling in light of yesterday's attack 8 people set on fire by a jihadist in Boulder.
Inviting me on. To the people I have spoken with, horror, a little bit of panic, there's some anger, there's some resentment, and there's a lot of fear. The rhetoric that we've been seeing, a friend of mine last night posted that she couldn't understand why, when for the last 2 years people had said, don't use words like killed Jews, that nobody listened. And I think the problem is that there are a lot of places where the volume is so much louder than people like you or me or my daughter or my nieces and nephews and so on, and we're drowned out. It's a desire to hate somebody for a reason that isn't understood, but has been bought and paid for by very, very clever people who have played the Western media. And when I say Western, I include Europe as well, because there were riots and burning in Paris yesterday as well.
Wow. We were just talking prior to this interview. You know, I ran the Boulder a week ago today. Right today. And throughout the entirety of the race, there were Free Palestine protesters. And then you have Jews being lit on fire a week later. Just prior to that, a few days prior to that, you had 2 Jewish people coming out at kids being shot. I look at the Free Palestine chant now as a call to violence. Is that a call to violence?
Yes, and it's an encouragement to everybody, to some people's base natures. I was thinking about that after you and I have spoken. I think that with the attention span narrowing and COVID, and always looking to blame somebody for something that may or may not have happened to you, that you may or may not have had anything to do with, currently, again, Jews and Israelis and Western Europeans, because please do not think that their hatred is only at Jews. It is seriously at Christians as well. I think there was an ambassador many, many years ago who made the comment, in fact, it was gold to my ear, that if they tell you they hate you and they want to kill you, believe them.
That's Joy. That's Joy Hoffman. Joy is a local Jewish leader here in Colorado, has been the chairwoman of the Arapahoe County Party. If you've been involved in Republican circles at all, you have run into Joy Hoffman. Joy, tell us what Jews are thinking this morning when they wake up. I was reading Ross Kaminsky's tweet yesterday that you better be armed. Anywhere you go, you better be armed. Do Jews... Are you getting a sense from your community that they can't even go anywhere in public without the threat of being burned or shot?
There is a segment of population that feels that way. There is a lot of my community I can't get hold of because it's Shavuos right now. Yeah. And much like the Chabad rabbi up in Boulder, who some of these people were members of his congregation. I can't get my cousins in New York City. They are observant Jews, and they are probably in services right now. And I am sure word has gotten out that it happened. But it's like I also have not spoken to my cousins in Israel, again, because it's Shavuos, and I can't get hold of them.
Can you tell us just briefly what that holiday is about?
Okay, Shavuos is the celebration of the end of the 7 weeks between Passover, which we celebrate, which is when the Jews were let go from Egypt, when God swept in with a mighty arm and brought us out of Egypt. And the 7 weeks in between is known as Omer, and we count a day every day. And that symbolizes wandering in the desert. That brought us to Mount Sinai. And today we celebrate, one, the end of the feast of the counting of the Omer, but two, we pledged a solidarity at the base of Mount Sinai to monotheism, to God. It is also the Feast of Women, and the symbol of Shavuos is roses. And it is the belief that we receive the 10 Commandments on this day, the Big Ten. We have 613 laws that give us guardrails of everything from thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not covet, 2 of the 10, to you will not mix silk with linen or cotton with linen, because it's disrespectful to both crops. And so this is the basis of where our moral and ethic code comes from. And then as we move multiple millennial forward, we have the gift that Christianity took in the 10 Commandments and its commitment to the battle of good and bad within a person. And the belief that is taught in Christian churches, as in Jewish synagogues and temples, that good will triumph over evil. And that's where this all comes from. And this is what the holiday is. It's supposed to be a very joyous time. But you know, we haven't had a Jewish festival in the last 2 years that has in any way been able to be joyous. We have people who are being held hostages, who are being tortured. We still have in our minds babies put in ovens and the ovens put on broil from 2 years ago. The awfulness has not left our community. It's sunk in deeper and deeper. And it's really hard to explain, but I'm trying.
Yeah. That's Joy Hoffman, local Jewish leader, active in Republican circles as well, former chairwoman of the Arapahoe County Republican Party. Joy, it just seems to continue, and I understand that.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, you had the attack 2 years ago, October 7th, and then there's been attacks against Jews. Can you tell us what this idea of a global intifada? People hear that, and I think you're seeing it played out now. What does that mean, and why is that a threat to Jews?
It's a threat to everyone, but particularly to Jews because we are the first-line target. The global intifada is a very carefully constructed, carefully encouraged, and in some places actively paid for by certain foreign entities to hit the most vulnerable of population. And the idea is to stir such hate without necessarily knowing what the hate is about, that they will go out and kill innocent people or throw incendiary devices that smash, ignite, and burn people. The global intifada is set up to destroy Western civilization and the Western religions. It won't be very long before they'll turn on Hindu and Buddhist and so on. But right now, they're having more fun successfully playing the Western thought process that does not think that there are people who will react to their worst instincts. The object of the Intifada is to destroy Israel first, America second, and third, to destroy Europe, which seems to be going faster than the other two. The belief is that there should be a Muslim caliphate where, first of all, I would not be allowed to speak on the radio to you.
Right.
Because I would be silenced or dead. Where the subordination of humans, the torture, the mutilations is perfectly fine. That a person, if they do not conform to a prescribed behavior, should be killed.
Yeah. Well, and Joy,
Gates for Palestine is an example of naivete to the point of stupidity.
Yes.
Because if they went there, they would be thrown off of buildings.
Yeah. And Joy, I ran into that firsthand. I spent 4 days covering the Palestinian protests at the DNC, and there would be these signs up, and they would say, come ask me questions. And so I'd come up and I'd go, what is this all about? And they're like, the global dominance of Islam. I mean, like, they said it in my microphone. We're not making this stuff up. They want the global dominance of Islam. And I asked them, well, what's going to happen to Christians and Jews? Well, they can live with us, but they're going to be second-class citizens. How about abortion? How about gay marriage? Any of that happen? Oh, no, well, absolutely get rid of that. And so you have this weird belief on the left, these college students that are very happy to celebrate Pride Month this month, meanwhile shouting Free Palestine, which is all about this global intifada that would wipe all of that out. There's no logical sense to it. But Joy, I've got to get up to a break here. Joy, you're a wonderful gift to our community. Our hearts and prayers are with you all in again, another tragedy directed at Jews. This has got to end. Thank you for taking time to join us today. And again, we continue to pray for you all.
Thank you, and we pray for you guys as well.
Thank you so much,
This
Joy.
is both of us.
Yeah.
Take care.
All right, we'll continue. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Thank you to Joy Hoffman for joining us. Gosh, it just doesn't seem to end for the Jews. I guess they've been doing this for 2,000 years, but America, not a safe place. I got a text message from a Jewish friend, Bill, who said, I feel safer in Israel right now than I do America. And we're at war.
That's interesting.
I mean, goodness. Well, we'll continue to have this conversation. This is the time of the morning where we give you a little bit of levity in light of what's been happening. So lift your spirits with some You Choose the News.
Yes, it's time for America's favorite fake radio news game show. We call it You Choose the News. Yes, I've scoured the interwebs for moments this morning to find really dumb stories about us humans, giving them even more ridiculous headlines so we can play this fake radio news game show. Why, oh, why would we waste valuable airtime? Because nobody in charge has any idea we are this irresponsible. Yes, this is what happens when Jeff and I are left unsupervised. The people in charge don't wake up until 7, so shh, this is a secret. As always, we want to make sure that we can blame somebody else when something goes wrong, so that's why we bring Blake Olson in from the newsroom. He's joining us this morning. Here we go, gentlemen. These are your headline choices. Headline number 1, D.I. Don't. Headline number 2, Taste of Success. Headline number 3, Scoring Your Anxiety. And headline number 4, Impromptu Party. Mr. Hunt.
Let's do the impromptu party.
Yeah, impromptu party. British Airways had an incident that happened recently on a flight from San Francisco to London. During dining service after takeoff, one of the flight attendants went missing. Not like they could have just left and gone home. The hell happened to the flight attendant? They couldn't find him until after food service was ended, and then they located him in one of the business class bathrooms, completely naked and dancing to himself. And then pretty high on drugs, it looks like. The crew suspected that the guy had imbibed drugs either intentionally or unintentionally sometime before the flight. He was relieved of his duties, put into a nice pair of first-class pajamas, and sat in an empty seat for the rest of the 10-hour journey. He was then reportedly removed from the airport in a wheelchair, received medical attention, and then was arrested. He's been suspended of his duties pending an investigation. But again, I'm curious if you dropped the drugs and was trying to figure out how soon until they hit, and he just did the math wrong, and all of a sudden, we're like, wow, that's not good. Not good at all. Yeah.
Wow.
I know. Again, I love the idea that it's meal service, and they're like, where'd John go? Like, can't leave anywhere. He can't just go to Starbucks. Look, it's a closed cylinder in the middle of the sky.
Right.
Where does he go?
Monday mornings were always like, gosh, it's a little tough, Didn't I have enough coffee? Well, at least you're not nude in the restroom.
Exactly. It's just
at work.
You're like, right? Where'd he go? He's just, this is a plane. He can't leave. Okay. All right. Mr.
Do you know there was a whole movie, like I think didn't Mel Gibson do a movie like that where the little girl disappears on a flight?
Oh.
No, Jodie Foster.
Oh, yeah, Jodie Foster.
Jodie Foster.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Blake Olson, D.I. Don't, Taste of Success, or Scoring Your Anxiety?
D.I. Don't.
Yeah, D.I. Don't. Here we find ourselves in Charlottesville, Virginia. A Charlottesville man is going to be facing up to a year in jail after being arrested for property damage. What did he do? He tried to make the streets safer. Kevin Cox has been complaining to the city of Charlottesville for years about the intersection of Elliott Avenue and 2nd Street. He said, we can't get traffic control cameras, police won't enforce the law, and people drive through this area way too fast. So he decided to do it yourself. He grabbed some water-soluble spray chalk last week and painted his own crosswalk.
Nice.
And oddly enough, it worked. Yes. Immediately, they saw cars slowing down. People were able to cross the street. Shannon Fitzgerald, who is a resident near the intersection, says this was the best time of her life because she's wheelchair bound. She says there's no access to a crosswalk or anything close, and it's very dangerous for me to try to cross the street. For me, she says, he's a hero.
Real man of genius.
I love that. So here we go. Mr. Hunt, your final choice, sir. Taste of Success or Scoring Your Anxiety?
Let's score your anxiety.
Yeah, let's score your anxiety. In recent years, we are told to track our steps, track our sleep, track absolutely everything about your passive life. And that oddly is inducing anxiety.
I bet it. 100%.
Research in the Netherlands has shown a lot of people are feeling anxiety from their Apple Watch, their Fitbit, their Garmin, or anything else used to track their health or especially their sleep. They say in some cases the data can be very helpful, but some patients become way too fixated on their data, leading to tensions and anxiety because they're always trying to break their high score. They say they see exceptionally in terms of sleep patterns. That if you see a poor score or you have any red warnings that you had a fitful night's sleep, oftentimes you put extra pressure on yourself the next night to sleep even better, and it doesn't work that way. So yes, all this tracking, your Apple Watch and everything else.
And then we tied our healthcare payment premiums to these things.
Yes.
So yes, I 100% get it.
Defeats the purpose.
Yes, you don't want to break your high score. Alrighty, that's it. That's the end of You Choose the News. Back to you, sir.
All right, coming up at 7 o'clock hour, Sheriff Steve Reams is going to join us, as well as George Brauchler. It's not going to be one you don't want to miss. You're listening to Jeff and Bill.
This is Denver's Talk Leader. We are KNUS.
Well, it's 7 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Monday, June 2nd, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. A sad day in Colorado. 8 burned in an attack at a Colorado event honoring Israeli hostages. This is from the New York Times. 2 victims airlifted to a burn unit with serious injuries, and a suspect was in custody. Officials said he used a, quote, makeshift flamethrower, unquote, in the attack, shouting, "Free Palestine," while he did it. Mohammed Solomon, 45 years old, from Egypt, here illegally, living in Colorado Springs. We're covering this all day today, and it's just heartbreaking. Our prayers go to the Jewish community, but our resolve needs to be to confront both this growing anti-Semitism that comes from the jihadis combining with the radical Marxist on our college campuses that believe in this oppressor-oppressed worldview, which then, you look at successful Jews and you go, well, of course they've got to be oppressors, and that green lights anything they want to do to them. And we've got to get real serious about what the chants "Free Palestine" and "From river to the sea" and all that stuff means, because it's clear. Both these attacks, Washington, D.C., and now Colorado, yelling "Free Palestine" as they shoot and burn Jews, it's a call to violence. It needs to be condemned. You see those stupid college kids out there with their "Free Palestine" signs, need to be condemned for what they're doing, which is calling for violence against Jews. I've interviewed these people over and over and over again. They believe that Zionism is a terrible evil, and they want to rid Jews from the Middle East, and they want to keep marching, take out America, Western civilization. Wake up, people. See what is actually happening here. And all these political leaders out there condemning, quote-unquote, hate. Get serious about what the real problem is, call it out, and join, in this case, with Donald Trump in getting these people that shouldn't be in this country out of here. Same thing with these college students that are intimidating Jewish students on college campuses. Get them out of here. All right, latest on this coming from Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning. 56 and partly cloudy in Denver. Expecting a high of 82 today. It's going to be a beautiful day. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story.
The subject has been identified as Mohammed Sabri Solomon, and he's 45 years old.
The terrorist who attacked innocent victims on Pearl Street, at that park on Pearl Street in Boulder on Sunday, is facing charges. And this morning, there are reports a Holocaust survivor was reportedly among the injured. Solomon's an illegal alien from Egypt who overstayed his visa. These young people were there.
A woman who was on the ground bleeding out. Oh my gosh, sorry. And then there were 2 other women whose calves were burned from the fire. And so I just ran over to stay with them and make sure that they didn't lose too much blood from their legs.
And there was a woman that was burning on the ground. And then we noticed 2 other people that had also been affected by the burns on their legs. And this man was shirtless and was yelling with some kind of accent and was threatening to burn people.
All right, so Solomon is in custody after setting the victims on fire with, as Jeff said, a makeshift flamethrower. At least 8 people were wounded. At least 2 were airlifted to UC Health Hospital for treatment of severe burns. It took place during a weekly gathering of individuals walking together and demonstrating solidarity with hostages still held in Gaza by Hamas.
The FBI is processing the crime scene and the subject vehicle and interviewing key witnesses. We're assisting Boulder police in providing technical, analytic, and additional forensic resources. As a result of these preliminary facts, it is clear that this is a targeted act of violence, and the FBI is investigating this as an act of terrorism. Sadly, attacks like this are...
And my cute computer is all messed up this morning. Joy Hoffman is a leader in the Jewish community here in Colorado. If it would stop here, and there it goes. And we'll hear from Joy soon. You just heard her on the show last hour. AG Phil Weiser said that he's offered state resources to Boulder's DA to help in the investigation and prosecution of any suspects. Governor Polis called the attack a heinous act of terror. Yep.
Sorry, I'm going to lose my mind on Phil Weiser here. You want to use state resources? Quit being a sanctuary state.
Yeah, that would help.
This guy was here illegally. He overstayed his visa.
Exactly.
And you're out there going, well, we can't coordinate with federal law or federal deportation efforts. Exactly. You want to use state resources. These little jihadists.
Yep.
Who shouldn't have been here in the first place. I want to see how this guy got through the system to begin with. I'm guessing you don't just drive one day and start lighting people on fire because you don't like their religion. I guarantee you this guy posted stuff, talked about it in chat rooms. You always kind of see it. It's like, oh, this guy was on an FBI list. Oh, we know about him for 5 years. I don't know if that's the exact case in this, but this always seems to pop up like this. So if Phil Weiser wants to use state resources to address this, get these jihadists the hell out of Colorado.
Right. To address it. There's nothing to address. Close it down. Shut it down. Close the borders. Have an actual wall, and at every airport make it extremely impossible.
I mean,
to
come on.
Get in. It's
Guys,
just ridiculous.
They built walls around castles for a reason. All right? At any point in any time in world history, there's been people you don't want inside your community.
Yep.
And in this case, it's radical jihadists who light Jews on fire. I don't want them in our community. You want to go be a stupid anti-Semite in Egypt, let Egypt deal with you. But I don't want them inside our own walls. And the fact that Jews have to walk around in our communities terrified that they might be shot or burned randomly is terrible. End it. Get these guys out.
The vetting process is crucial, and this is what has to change. Get away the political correctness. 2 years ago, we probably wouldn't be able to say this guy was a Muslim and he was a terrorist.
Right.
We would have to go, well,
be
we're
a
not
war
sure.
on terror. I mean, that
it
ticked
was
me
a
off
white
even
man
then.
without a T-shirt. Yeah.
Exactly. Back when Bush was doing it, and it was a war on terror. It wasn't a war on terror. It was a war on jihadi crazies.
No more sanctuary cities. Close the borders and actually vet people and make it impossible for people to get in here via airports and the border, whatever. I mean, it isn't brain surgery, but we know that there are probably over 300 million terrorists who want to get rid of the infidels, and we are the infidels. So Jews, Christians, Americans, and
Blake,
that's
they
the bottom line.
Tell us that.
Yes,
they say that. They said it into my microphone in Chicago. We want Islamic dominance of the entire world. And meanwhile, it's like, oh, how dare you repeat what they say.
My goodness. All right, so Joy Hoffman was on with Jeff and Billy last hour. Let's hear a portion of that.
I think the problem is that there are a lot of places where the volume is so much louder than people like you or me or my daughter or my nieces and nephews and so on, and we're drowned out. It's a desire to hate somebody for a reason that isn't understood, but has been bought and paid for by very, very clever people who have played the Western media. And when I say Western, I include Europe as well, because there were riots and burning in Paris yesterday as well.
Yeah, France, it was on fire over the weekend, and that's because of open borders and the immigration system letting everyone in. Culturally, they don't have anything in common. They're destroying Western Europe, and Italy, it appears, is the only one standing up and fighting for their culture and their country. So this is what's going to happen when you have open borders and you have illegal immigration everywhere in the world. So great comments from Joy Hoffman. A teenage girl is dead, and one is suffering from serious injuries after a shooting in Aurora. Aurora police said a third victim was grazed by a bullet. It happened Sunday near Hoffman Park at a fire station parking lot. Police are investigating that. 47's big beautiful bill faces uncertainty in the Senate. The multi-trillion-dollar tax and spending package narrowly passed the House, and the Senate will take up the measure this week. DJT is set to meet with Germany's new chancellor at the White House this Thursday. Mount Etna in Italy suddenly erupts this morning. Quite the scene and dramatic video online. Rockies fall to the Mets 5-3. They're in Miami this afternoon at 4:40. 53 in Englewood, 54 in Thornton, 56 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Your 7:10 5-day forecast here in Denver on this early Monday. Partly cloudy skies with a temperature around 60 degrees by daybreak. For the rest of your Monday, partly sunny skies with showers and thunderstorms likely. Some of those could be heavy. Highs around 80. Showers and storms continuing tonight with lows in the lower 50s. Tuesday and Wednesday, showers and storms, highs in the 60s to low 70s. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. I'm meteorologist Patrice Sutter in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're going to be joined by Steve Reams here in just a minute, Weld County Sheriff, as well as Ron Weinberg, State Representative Chase Davis, who's a pastor up in the Boulder area, on what he's seen since the attack yesterday, and then Dr. James Robbins. Later in the show, he's the Dean of Academics for the Institute of World Politics. Tragedy in Boulder yesterday is 8 burned in an attack. Jihadist and a makeshift flamethrower plus Molotov cocktails yelling "Free Palestine" as he threw these incendiary devices into this crowd of Jews that were gathering. It's a small group of Jews, and they were gathering to remember those that are still hostages. Could you imagine 2 years later in the hellhole that is Gaza right now, you having to live and survive as an Israeli hostage taken by Hamas? Goodness. Just terrible. You remember they brought back those bodies of little kids too? And at first it wasn't even the mother's body. They had to, oh my gosh. We're going to talk with Reams in a second. I want to talk to you about my friend Dan Kaplis with Dan Kaplis Law. I've known Dan well over a decade. Pro-life, pro-faith, pro-family, pro-America. Right there with us on the values. The son of a police officer and a former seminarian. You know, Dan has gotten justice for Coloradans for 40 years. People hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes. Dan has delivered for them. A few weekends ago, I had a buddy contact me, said he was having a medical malpractice issue. And Dan, I texted Dan. Dan, within 5 minutes, texted me back over the weekend. with a referral for him. Dan just cares about people. That's why he's got such a sterling reputation here. Listen to this. He's probably the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado state history. In fact, Dan Kaplis Law is so trusted, he's the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Kaplis Law, a serious firm for serious cases. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. So if you need Dan's help, give him a call. Here's the phone number, 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551, or hit dankapleslaw.com. That's Dan, C-A-P-L-I-S law.com. I've been so impressed with this guy. He's the Weld County Sheriff, and he's just cut straight to the bone. I mean, this guy is so straightforward. It's so needed in a state where our political leaders are just all over the place. He's very clear on the threats that we face, the importance of law enforcement responding. Joining us now, Steve Reams, Weld County Sheriff. Good morning, Sheriff. Thanks for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yes, good morning.
Well, it's a heartbreaking day to see our friends, and in this case, they're all over the age of 60, and this guy shows up with a Molotov cocktail and a makeshift flamethrower to burn Jews in the street. And I just wanted to, you as a law enforcement, I know your sense of justice gets hit on this stuff. Give us your read on what's happening, Sheriff Steve Reams.
Yeah, it was, so obviously it's a heartbreaking incident. And, when we heard about it yesterday, we were out celebrating the graduation of a bunch of kids from high school, and you're sitting at graduation parties and this news starts to kind of filter through. It just punches you in the gut. And then the more you listen and kind of get additional facts, when it was first reported, it was, some white guy, was throwing stuff at a crowd. And then you realize these people were set on fire and there was potentially a makeshift flamethrower. And then you start to see the footage on TV, as we got later into the evening, and it's obvious this is a terror attack. And to kind of watch, and I don't fault the police chief in Boulder, but to kind of watch, this attempt to not say those words just yet, it tells you the community that he's policing, the community that he represents. And as a police officer or a sheriff, it's tough if you're trying to bring justice for folks in a community that almost promotes this kind of behavior, because we don't want to take on the bad guy, we don't want to take on the criminal. And this police chief is doing the best he can, but to hear the FBI come out and say this is a clear act of terrorism pretty early tells you a lot about just how severe this incident was, and how much worse it probably could have been if this guy had intended to go any further. It's just a very, very scary incident, and it's so close to all of us. I mean, it's right here in our own state, and Boulder's they're not new to tragedy, as we all know. So it's heartbreaking, and you hope that something good comes from this, and maybe it's a wake-up call to our state leaders who every time something bad happens, they say we just have to do something. Well, maybe the something they do this time is to say, you know what, we don't want to be a sanctuary state anymore. This was completely preventable by getting this guy out of the country before he had the chance to become radicalized.
That's Steve Reams, Weld County Sheriff. Steve, we're reading that this guy was brought in initially on a temporary visa, overstayed, got a temporary work visa, but that expired as well. And so he was here operating illegally. We don't know if there was a direct order, from what I've seen, to remove him that was somehow ignored or anything like that. It seemed like he just kind of slipped through the cracks, but those cracks matter. And in a state like Colorado that, is in some cases proudly a sanctuary state, you get Governor Polis, he goes, no, we're not a sanctuary state. And then the state legislator is like, well, no, let's become more of a sanctuary state. So you get this, weird thing happening there. But, the cracks matter in this case. He fell through. He shouldn't have been here. how hard is it on you in law enforcement, as local law enforcement, to have these constraints put on you by the state with regards to working with federal immigration officials?
Well, it's extremely difficult for every law enforcement official in this state to really have a true impact on crime in their communities, because we have watered down our judicial system so much. Our criminal justice system has been so cut off at the knees that, we have to arrest the same folks over and over and over again before we finally get a chance at maybe sending them away for a little while and stopping their reigns of terror. So then you add in the illegal immigrant component, and you have these same folks who are already in the country illegally, and then they too continue to commit repeated crimes, and you can't eliminate those folks from your society either, because you can't work with ICE in an effective manner. So yeah, I mean, we have our own homegrown criminals that we have to deal with each and every day, and that's what law enforcement is for. But the added stresses of having these illegal immigrants on top of that we have no good way of getting rid of, not in this state anyways, it's definitely a problem. As a sheriff, I can tell you that I'm doing everything I can to work around work with ICE and work around the constraints of the state law so that ICE can still pick up people from my facility. But it's definitely not as easy as it should be. And, it's just getting worse each year. And, as you alluded to, Senate Bill 276 is just one more nail in the coffin, if you will, that makes the life of law enforcement officers extremely difficult in this state, and for no good reason. We're not benefiting anybody other than those that are here to take advantage of our communities.
That's Sheriff Steve Reams. He's the sheriff of Weld County, right next to Boulder. Again, a terrorist attack taking place, 8 burned, and an attack against Jews, where a man shows up. He drives from Colorado Springs to Boulder with a makeshift flamethrower, Molotov cocktails. All the victims over the age of 60. These were innocent, elderly people that this guy attacked. Sheriff, we're getting text messages here about what the proper response could have been if people were concealed carry. If there's a guy with a flamethrower and Molotov cocktails, and if this had happened maybe in a rural county like where I live in Elbert County, I don't think he would have survived. Maybe Boulder, because of some concealed carry things, this guy was allowed to survive. What's the proper response from your mind if someone's trying to light you on fire or throw Molotov cocktails? Can you respond with deadly force if you're a concealed carry person?
Yeah, if you're a handgun carrier, concealed or open carry, as many people do here in Weld County, if you feel that your life or the life of someone else is being threatened by the actions of someone else, you have the duty and the responsibility, in my mind, to respond with the appropriate amount of force and threat. And a firearm would definitely be suitable in a situation like that. There were some talks on social media and other things that you could hear someone on one of those recordings saying, "I wish I'd had my gun." I haven't heard that, but it's been talked about plenty on social media. So, I can't reinforce more that everyone has to have a little bit of personal investment in their own public safety. And we encourage people carry a firearm and know how to use it. And know the proper time in which to deploy that, because you just never know when you're going to be in the middle of a situation where some nutball decides he's going to set people on fire. And, I don't know that incident would have been stopped, because, you have to wait until you see something and before you can necessarily react. But maybe it could have been shortened, and maybe it could have been prevented. Either way, the fact that a person targets Pearl Street kind of tells you that, they're going for the easy targets, somewhere that they know is likely to be a gun-free zone, and they're probably not going to encounter resistance.
Powerful words from Steve Reams, sheriff of Weld County. Our friend over at KOA, Ross Kaminsky, posting last night, because he's Jewish: to my fellow Jews, buy a gun for concealed carry, buy a gun for your home. I mean, it's got to be heartbreaking as somebody who cares about justice, who cares about the peace and tranquility of people, to watch Jews in America in 2025 be rightfully fearful about going out in public. just 10 days ago or so, shot walking out of the Israeli embassy. Yesterday, set on fire. I mean, it's got to be maddening and frustrating to know that innocent people are targets in our communities today. What's your response, Sheriff Steve Reams?
You know, I say this all the time, but in our society, an armed society is a polite society. And Ross Kaminsky's right. You know, you do have to have some personal investment in your own safety. But it's sad that we've gotten to that point, and it's sad that people are being targeted just for their religious beliefs. You know, that's I mean, America is the nation it is for a whole lot of reasons, and that's one of the fundamental tenets, is to be able to practice the religion you choose and not fear for doing so. And for the Jewish community to have to live in fear and hide those beliefs out of concern for their own safety, that's not America. That's not the world we live in. And anybody in Colorado who doesn't see that this is a problem, well, you should open your eyes. And if you're an elected official and you don't take the correct actions to figure out how to change the direction in which we're going, you're just as much to blame. And I got to tell you, I'm sorely disappointed at the direction that the state has gone. And I hope that if anything good comes from this, it's that the community start to wake up and say, we've got to turn this thing around. This has gone too far. When people are being set on fire in the streets, I think we can assume enough is enough, and we have to take our state back.
That's exactly right. That's Steve Reams, Weld County Sheriff, one of the best out there protecting his community. Sir, thank you so much for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show this morning.
Yes, thank you.
It's my pleasure, guys. Thank you.
Again, Steve Reams, Weld County. We've got George Brauchler coming up. Let's talk alarm detection systems. Steve Reams talked about it. You've got these weak on justice, weak on prosecution, DAs out there, George Brauchler not being one of them, but you saw it happen in Arapahoe County, where these guys are getting out. The bad guys are getting out with almost nothing. And no bonds on some of these guys, or these cash-free bonds. We've got a real problem in our state, and if you try to own and run a business right now, you got to protect it yourself with a quality alarm detection systems. Fortunately, folks sponsoring the show believe in our values and can protect you. Alarm detection systems, the highest level of service and expertise, and they combine it all into one source for your cameras, key card access, fire and intrusion systems. ADS offers expert alarm installation and testing by highly trained technicians, 24/7 professional monitoring, same day or next day service upon request because downtime isn't an option, dedicated teams for cameras, access control, and fire alarms, and over 300 security professionals working for you. Choosing ADS means your business stays protected and will be ready to open tomorrow. Combining human monitoring with the latest AI camera technology, they prevent crime in real time. Trusted by small and large businesses, including many Colorado schools, their security experts will review your system for free. Go to adsalarm.com to schedule your appointment today. adsalarm.com. Alarm detection systems, the first choice of Front Range and Colorado businesses, adsalarm.com. We've got George Brauchler joining us next to talk about what the prosecution of this guy who lit 8 people on fire yesterday is going to look like. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Now, this music isn't the most appropriate music in light of what we're dealing with today. 8 Jews burned in an attack, but I do have visions in my head of George Brauchler in middle school pumping himself up to this song.
Actually,
getting excited.
This is what George plays every day when he's getting out of the shower.
Yeah.
This runs in the background, and so he gets in front of the mirror and he does the shadow boxing. And
He's the district attorney of Judicial District 23. He joins us now.
I'm going to get arrested.
He does all this. Good morning, George. Thanks for being on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And in all candor, I mix it up between that and ABBA's Dancing Queen. It just depends on the mood I'm in when I roll out of the sack.
That's true. Kind of important. You got to choose, based on that feeling, which one's going to pump you up the best.
It's a hard day. We just got off with Steve Reams. We've heard from Joy Hoffman. We're covering the latest news: a terrorist attack in Colorado. 8 burned. Guy drives from Colorado Springs with a makeshift flamethrower and burns a group of Jewish folks gathering on the Pearl Street in Boulder to raise awareness around the hostages that have been taken to Gaza. George, I want to ask you in this segment here, what's the Boulder DA likely to do? What's the process that the Boulder DA will take to prosecute this type of crime? And how will the FBI be involved with all this? Your thoughts, sir?
Well, I think that there's going to be a conversation that has to take place between District Attorney Michael Doherty. And for those folks who don't know, dude is straight up legit prosecutor, Democrat or Republican. This is a guy who's handled some of the biggest cases in the jurisdictions in which he's worked, including he personally prosecuted the guy that massacred those 10 people at the King Soopers. And so this is a guy that gets it. He's not one of these Soros-funded DAs who has barely ever seen the inside of a courtroom. So in part, he's kind of going to go through two things. One is he's going to be analyzing how do we put together the best case possible under the current Colorado case law. And there are some real limitations on the tools that we have to address things like this that aren't attempted murder or possession of an incendiary device, things like that. We don't have any good terrorism charges or anything. He's then going to have a serious conversation with the U.S. Attorney's Office about where should this case be prosecuted. I think unlike the Oklahoma City bombing trial, where you had both the local prosecution in Oklahoma and then you had the federal prosecution that took place out here in Denver, in about 99.99999% of all of their cases, it's either the feds or it's the locals. It's just not both. And so they're going to have a serious conversation about where does this case get handled prosecution-wise. And for me, the bottom line is who gets the most bang for their buck. Now, we encountered this with the Aurora Theater case. There was real push by the Obama Justice Department to want to suck that case into the feds by claiming acts of terrorism, using the incendiary device as a vehicle. And I got to tell you, the SAC at the time, the special agent in charge, went to bat for us and said, hey, no, Washington, D.C., this is a local crime. Let's let the local prosecutors handle it. So I imagine Michael's going to go through that conversation with acting U.S. Attorney Bishop Gruhl right now. And then beyond that, he's got to start thinking in terms of trying to put together a case where the only defense to a crime like this is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And so he's already got to be thinking in terms of how do we gather up as much available information as possible to rebut the inevitable claim that this guy is either incompetent, and we saw that with the King Super shooter, or insane, which we saw with the King Super shooter and the Aurora Theater shooter. This is a pretty common defense. So his hands are full right now.
That's George Brauchler, District Attorney, Judicial District 23. George, how important is it to prosecute this locally? As you mentioned, the feds are going to want to take a bite of this, and I think rightfully so. This guy shouldn't have been here. He had overstayed his visa. Why is it important for a local community to get justice locally for these guys?
This is a big one. I think we're going to see more stuff like this. And I don't want to say we've got a trend just because we saw the two Jewish people killed out in front of I think it was the Jewish embassy a week or so ago. But you can start to see these things end up developing a bit of a pattern, and there's a certain copycat aspect of it. And I'm so glad you're having Weinberg on later on in the show, because he'll tell you this is something that's been percolating for a long, long time in state legislators, in places of higher education. And we've cultivated this idea that we can go ahead and espouse things like from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, and it won't result in anything. And I think that's fake. And I think this, combined with a very permissive / reckless immigration policy that we've had up until the current administration, this thing's ready to blow. So if more and more things like this happen, I think our focus has to be to make a big public deal out of, and of course these guys are going to get their due process, but of vigorously prosecuting them with every tool at our disposal. And then if we're able to secure a conviction at trial, to make it a big public deal. We got to send a message that this won't be tolerated, that terrorism won't be tolerated. Now, having said that, the question is, where do we get the biggest bang for our buck on this guy sentencing wise? Is it the feds? Because they have a de facto 85% got to serve this sentence before you can be paroled sort of attitude. We now have that. If you'll remember, Michael Fields and the good folks at Advanced Colorado helped push that initiative through off the ballot in November that Coloradans overwhelmingly supported. And starting January 1 of this year, violent crimes have to be served at 85%. So I think you have to look at the numbers, add them up, and figure out who's got the best potential to get the most punishment out of this thing, and then go that way.
That's George Brauchler, district attorney and former talk show host. Some of you might remember his days as a talk show host, and I'm still in therapy because of them. We love you, George. Now, I do want to ask you, once the feds declare this an act of terrorism, how does it help local prosecution? And then how does it create some hurdles for local prosecution?
Well, the hurdles will be that if the feds saber rattle enough, they're going to end up trying to take this case. Now, there's policies that exist at DOJ there's one called the Pettit policy that says if the local prosecutor opts to prosecute, that the feds should defer. That has worked really well in about 95% of cases, but with President Donald Trump at the helm, I'm not convinced it'll work here. This is a real opportunity to highlight a couple of his major pushes, and one is a defense of Israel, and two is we're going to crush the illegal immigrants who come here and commit crimes. So that's going to be the biggest hurdle. The benefit is when you have the feds as a partner, they're able to provide you with a ton of resources that are unimaginable. And we were the beneficiaries of those for the Aurora Theater massacre. One cautionary tale, and I'm sure DA Doherty knows this, once you give evidence to the feds to process out at their forensic facility or wherever they're going to send it, you lose control of it until they give it back. And that's a problem, because the feds don't care what state courts say about you have to have discovery to the defense by this period of time. You have to have these reports done. The feds don't care. They act like they care. They say words like they care, but their internal bureaucratic process for handling forensic evidence is brutal. The number of layers of things that have to be done to be reviewed and okayed and promised and all, that's a problem. The other thing that happens is when you have federal agents who are involved in investigation and they become witnesses, the state doesn't have the ability to drop a subpoena on them and say, hey, come to court on this day, I need you to testify. Now, they can agree to it, and many times they do, but it's not like a you or me kind of subpoena. You have to get a special process and permission to be able to put a federal agent on the stand. So tons of resources, but there are certain pitfalls.
That's George Brauchler, district attorney. Now, earlier on, George, you talked about that right now, the most likely defense in this case will be that he's crazy. And you would assume driving from Colorado Springs and trying to light a bunch of people on fire, sometimes very self-evident of crazy. So now we are just going to game plan. Let's assume the defense is going to go with the mental incapacity or crazy defense. How does the prosecution need to start poking holes? Where are some of the avenues that the prosecution will be looking at to prove this guy knew exactly what he was doing? He was in possession of his faculties, and that's why he drove so far in order to inflict so much harm. What are some of the opportunities available for the Boulder DEA so they just can't say, sorry, he's crazy, he's got to sit in a state-sponsored and state-paid-for cell in a mental institution for the rest of his life until he crosses over and we declare him sane, and then he gets out anyway. So, yeah, how do you attack this?
Really, really smart question. And there's two things at work here, and they're not the same. One is, I have no doubt that if this goes to state court, that the public defenders assigned to represent him will claim that he is incompetent. That will delay the proceedings, and then someone from the state hospital or approved by the state hospital will have to review to determine if this guy knows what's going on and he can actively participate in his defense. Now, you should know, and this is percolating behind the scenes, the state department that covers that, CDPHE, I'm sorry, the mental health folks down at Pueblo. I don't know why CMHIP, so many letters. These folks have more and more found reasons to find people incompetent repeatedly over and over and over again. And it's probably going to require DA Doherty, who's familiar with them because of what happened in that King Soopers case, to push back hard on the finding of incompetence. That's the first step. That's different from insanity. Insanity is where the prosecutor has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this guy committed these horrible, evil terrorist acts, knowing right from wrong based on societal standards of morality, and that he could form the mental intent to kill after deliberation, after intending it too. And so that requires a whole bunch of things. One, I imagine they've done a deep, deep dive with the Fed's help on all of his social media, anything that they can find. Here's a little limitation. Normally, you're able to go back in time with someone, like with the Aurora theater shooter. We went back to California and scraped up as much information from his youth through college as we could get. Well, this dude's from Egypt. He's only been here a couple years. That's going to be incredibly difficult. They're going to want to interview everybody who spoke to him over the last couple weeks or so, and going as far back as they can to determine if he was evidencing any sort of intellectual changes in his quantity or quality of speech, sometimes the substance of the speech. Did he have strong interpersonal relationships that changed? Did he develop new ones? These are all things they're going to want to chase down. But at the end of the day, one of the biggest tests is going to be when this guy says he's incompetent and ultimately insane, will the Colorado Mental Health Institute of Pueblo agree or disagree?
George Brauchler, District Attorney for Judicial District 23, joining the Jeff and Bill Show. This is going to be a long process, trial, all that. So grateful to have good friends like George that can help us understand this.
Yes.
Follow George Brauchler on X at George Brauchler, George spelled last name Brauchler. George, thank you for the great work you're doing in Judicial District 23.
Do I have 20 seconds?
Yes,
20
please.
Seconds to say one thing. I've seen a friend, a guy named Steve Redfern, the chief of police in Boulder, take it in the chops on social media. And I just want to disabuse people of the fact that this guy is no patsy or rollover, and he shouldn't be fired or any of that. This dude was the hero of the Aurora theater shooting. He was the sergeant behind Theater 9 that made the decisions that saved the lives of 30, 40 different people. He is a legit chief of police. His problem is twofold. One, he's at the front end of an investigation where he's worried about the things he's saying potentially impacting the prosecution. That's legit. And two, he's not a sheriff. If it was Reams, if it was me, if it was Weekly, you're an elected official, you're going to come out and say, this was an act of terrorism. When you're an employee of the Boulder city government, you take a different approach. So ease up a bit on Steve Redfern if you're out there, folks. He is a good dude. He will do a good job.
Great insight. That's why we love you, George. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you.
All right, we'll continue. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Hard day for Colorado. 8 burned in an attack at an event honoring Israeli hostages. Our phone systems are down, and this is system-wide. This isn't just here. This is all of Salem's dealing with this.
It wasn't supposed to be our phones because we have the particular phones for the show are disconnected from the rest of the phone system in Salem. So it's done this way to specifically prevent this. But yeah, no, it's Monday. So we have all those typical Monday problems. So yeah, our phone system's not working. You can go ahead and hit us on the text messages though.
Yep, text message line is 720-819-5115, 720-819-5115. Lots of text messages coming in here.
Yeah, a lot of
Suzanne wondering if you should fire into a crowd just to get one person. No, you shouldn't. But in this case, if you look at the video, the guy was over by himself. So there was no crowd
but once he's
behind
over,
him.
But once he's over by himself, he's no longer a direct threat. And so your self-defense. So that's the thing is I would caution people in that situation. You then lose the shield of self-defense because if that person isn't providing a direct threat to you, it's hard to walk into court and say, I felt like he was threatening my life and those around me when he's standing there not attacking people. Now, if
I don't know, he's still holding Molotov cocktails.
But again, that's different from if he's not necessarily providing a direct threat. Again, how the self-defense laws are written, that's really, really, really tough. Just like you can't shoot a guy when he's running out of your house. And again, we can disagree or
away.
About
in this case, I don't know.
But again, that's where those laws are defined because it has to be a direct threat. If someone is standing far away, again, 10 feet away from you, holding Molotov cocktails that are not lit, where's the direct threat? That's where that's where it's going to be really sticky. So you've got to be careful there. However, if it's during the attack, then you've got something. Then you have something. And so the idea being that if someone was there and did have a concealed carry permit and was able to draw on him during the attack, I think you've got something. And I'm assuming the person that would make that decision would also have enough trigger discipline to not fire randomly into the crowd, to only take the clean shot. But that's my assumption that I'm making. And, we know what we say about assumptions on the show.
0459, this was a planned peaceful demonstration on the mall, and the criminal drove about 2 hours north to be there and disrupt it. That all shows premeditation and that he's not criminally insane. But as George pointed out, it's almost like they look for reasons these days to identify people as unfit to sit trial. And I bring this up because you remember the guy in Jefferson County who crashed into people, killed somebody in the car with him, and then was let out because of the brain injury he received during the accident made him unfit to stand trial.
Yeah, so the injury he gave himself doing the crimey thing made him unfit. This one, I think the travel is going to be an issue, just like it was in the King Soopers shooting, but that guy was declared incompetent early on as well. As George Brauchler pointed out, our last guest, I believe the Boulder DA, because of dealing with the mental institution, the mental doctors in Pueblo, will understand how to come at them better and understand some of their diagnoses. And in the Boulder case with the King Soopers shooter, the DA's office was really good at countering the experts from the state on the mental health issue. They were really solid, and I'm assuming that they're going to come correct with the same type of team again. So I'm less convinced this guy's going to be able to claim the insanity defense.
5631, are we hearing from moderate American Muslims condemning the Boulder terrorist attack? I have not. Those Molotov cocktails can be thrown. If you look at the situation, there's open flames not far from him. Wow. Well, we got a lot more to talk about. We're going to continue coverage, plus the latest news. You're listening to Jeff and Bill.
710 KNUS.
West Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't understand what's the issue.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
Lord bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk 710 KNUS.
It's 8 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Monday, June 2nd, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. Heartbreaking day. 8 burned in an attack at a Colorado event honoring Israeli hostages. This man, Mohammed Sabri Solomon, drives from Colorado Springs with a makeshift flamethrower. Molotov cocktails, attacks. No one under the age of 60. This elderly group of Jews trying to remember those that have been taken by Hamas. It's terrible. We're going to get to the latest news on this, and then coming up right after news and weather, we're going to be joined by Representative Ron Weinberg. If you remember Ron, great friend of the show, Jewish Republican member of the Colorado House of Representatives, had to endure anti-Semitic shouts from Democrat colleagues from the gallery trying to interrupt him 2 sessions ago. What is happening to the state? We're going to get to Ron here in just a second. Now it's time for news and comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning. 60 and partly cloudy in Denver. Expecting a high of 82 today. The 710 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story.
The subject has been identified as Mohammed Sabri Solomon, and he's 45 years old.
A Holocaust survivor was reportedly among those injured in the terrorist attack at the park on Pearl Street in Boulder Sunday. Solomon's an illegal alien from Egypt who overstayed his visa thanks to the Biden administration.
The FBI is processing the crime scene and the subject vehicle and interviewing key witnesses. We're assisting Boulder police and providing technical, analytic, and additional forensic resources. As a result of these preliminary facts, it is clear that this is a targeted act of violence, and the FBI is investigating this as an act of terrorism.
Solomon is in custody and possibly facing murder charges after setting his victims on fire with a makeshift flamethrower. At least 8 people were wounded, and at least 2 were airlifted to the hospital for treatment of severe burns. It took place during a weekly gathering of individuals walking together to demonstrate solidarity with hostages still in Gaza, held in Gaza by Hamas. Weld County Sheriff Steve Reams chimed in last hour on the show.
You know, Boulder's they're not new to tragedy, as we all know. So, it's heartbreaking, and you hope that something good comes from this, and maybe it's a wake-up call to our state leaders who every time something bad happens, they say we just have to do something. Well, maybe the something they do this time is to say, you know what, we don't want to be a sanctuary state anymore. This was completely preventable by getting this guy out of the country before he had the chance to become radicalized.
And DA from Judicial District 23, George Brauchler, was also on the program with Jeff and Billy last hour.
This thing's ready to blow. So if more and more things like this happen, I think our focus has to be to make a big public deal out of, and of course these guys are going to get their due process, but of vigorously prosecuting them with every tool at our disposal. And then if we're able to secure a conviction at trial, to make it a big public deal. We got to send a message.
President Trump's big, beautiful bill will be making its way to the Senate soon. The multi-trillion-dollar tax and spending package narrowly passed the House, and the Senate will take up the measure this week. where Republicans can only afford to lose 3 votes. Democrats say the White House is trying to cut Medicare and other social safety nets by billions of dollars. Of course, they're saying that. Republicans say there are much needed reforms to the programs that will cut the deficit. A teenager, a girl, is dead, and one is suffering from serious injuries after a shooting in Aurora. Aurora police said a third victim was grazed by a bullet. It happened Sunday near Hoffman Park at a fire station parking lot. Police are investigating. Ukraine's security service claims to have carried out a massive drone strike that destroyed at least 40 Russian bombers. The operation involved smuggling drones well into Russia over an 18-month period. The EU and NATO, they love this, just trying to keep the war alive, as ceasefire talks were set to continue today.
The drones then hidden in makeshift wooden cabins mounted on cargo trucks, the roof opening remotely. And Ukraine says its operatives escaped Russia without capture.
Well, June means weddings, and Buffalo Bills quarterback Josh Allen and actress Hallie Steinfeld have tied the knot. Happened over the weekend in California. Rockies fall to the Mets 5-3. They take on Miami today at 4:40 first pitch. 57 in Brighton, 58 in Littleton, 60 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
A Pacific trough of low pressure, a cool front, and abundant moisture will mean an active day of showers and thunderstorms along the Front Range and eastern plains of Colorado. Might have a few strong to severe thunderstorms through evening. Highs today low 80s, lows tonight upper 40s, with afternoon and evening showers and thunderstorms. Much cooler tomorrow. Lingering shower and thunderstorm chances, highs Tuesday only near 60. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're continuing our coverage of the terrorist attack that took place yesterday. Pearl Street, Boulder, a number of elderly Jews gathering to remember the hostages that were taken by Hamas into Gaza that remain there. And this psychopath, Mohammed Sabri Solomon, 45 years old, drives from Colorado Springs with a makeshift flamethrower, Molotov cocktails, attacks these Jews, yells "Free Palestine" while this is taking place. And really, the political leader that has had to confront this anti-Semitism in a way that I don't know any other political leader in Colorado has had to, literally shouted down by anti-Semites in the Democrat Party while he was giving speeches on the floor of the House of Representatives. Ron Weinberg now joins us to give us some perspective. Representative, it feels constant. I'm sure it feels constant to you. I'm so sorry for what the Jews are having to face here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And, I appreciate you guys having me on the show. Unfortunate circumstances today with what happened yesterday. But it's anti-Semitism in Colorado is real.
And you just had a few days ago the shooting that took place in Washington, D.C. Now, so you have Jews being shot in broad daylight. You have Jews being burned in broad daylight. Ron, give me perspective on how the Jewish community feels in America right now.
The Jewish community is fearful. Unfortunately, it's hurtful. We are wondering every day what's going to happen. If this can happen in Boulder to random people peacefully demonstrating their beliefs, what's going to happen to me and my 8-year-old and 10-year-old when I go to King Supers? So we have to keep mindful of what's going on, and we're a little bit concerned, not going to lie.
That's Representative Ron Weinberg here in Colorado. Representative, we saw statements coming from the Democrat leaders in Colorado. Democrats completely control the state. There's not a single Republican elected statewide, near supermajorities in the House and the Senate. And I noticed that even Jewish Democrat lawmakers were condemning, quote, hate. It seems to me feckless to condemn hate when you have a Middle Eastern man yelling free Palestine while burning Jews in public, that maybe we might want to call a spade here, which is radical Islamism that has combined with a Marxist worldview that's been pushed on college campuses. And you saw that attack in Washington, D.C., which seemed to be rooted more in Marxism. Tell me your perspective on the response from Democrat political leaders here in Colorado to what happened yesterday.
I'm just going to be quite frank. It's absolutely nonsense, because all the bills coming out of the House of Representatives and state Congress, for Pete's sake, are encouraging this stuff. I mean, when they make these relaxed laws, when they expand illegal immigration, when everything that they do in that chamber is literally the precursor to this. This guy was an illegal immigrant who overstayed his visa. The governor just passed or signed a law expanding Colorado to be a sanctuary state for illegal immigrants. We're just setting ourselves up for this, and then literally coming out and writing statements of, oh, we're truly saddened by what happened and blah, 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 blah. Can we empower our law enforcement to talk to federal agencies so that we can get these criminals off of our streets? Can we please put the Colorado citizens first, for Pete's sake? Because this is just the beginning. This is happening to Jews. Wait till it happens to everybody in the state. If everyone thinks that it's only going to be Jews at the end of the day that's going to be hurt of this, it's not. It's going to be people in Colorado. We need to get these Democrats out of office. We need to get a new governor in next year, and we need to put our law enforcement back in charge of our streets.
That's Representative Ron Weinberg pointing out this guy should have never been here. The guy that attacked the Jews in Boulder should have never been here. First of all, we got to see a review of how he got into this country to begin with, because you don't just wake up one day and decide I'm going to drive 2+ hours and burn elderly Jews. You typically have a pattern, a history of anti-Semitic comments that are made, radical Islamist comments that have been made. And so what did he have in his background, his past, that would have allowed him to get into the country in the first place? But then overstays his visa. The Biden administration gives him a temporary work visa, overstays that. He should have been out of here on the 28th of March, I think, were the last numbers that I saw. So he continued to stay here. A crime that was completely preventable if federal immigration agents were able to get him out. Possibly was the state ignoring him. Regardless, he fell through a crack, and those cracks have serious consequences. 8 people being burned, including one that was a Holocaust survivor. Representative Ron Weinberg, have you, and I know this is hard because Jewish leaders are now celebrating a holiday that kind of takes them out of the public square to discuss this, but what are you hearing from Jewish leaders in Colorado? Are they calling for reform from our Democrat political leaders, many of whom are Jewish? Or have they had enough? And do you see Jared Polis, Phil Weiser, Jenna Griswold, Michael Bennett, I even believe has Jewish heritage? Are they willing to root out anti-Semitism within their own party?
If they are, I'm not seeing it. That's what makes it really upsetting. Jared Polis's statement yesterday, it's all fair and good, and it's all words are very easy. My father always taught me is, words are cheap. You can't buy them back. The laws that we're putting in place in this state are encouraging this behavior. And the Democrat Party is nowhere to be seen in bringing back law and order to our streets, which is exactly what happened yesterday. I mean, this idiot tried to set a fire first, set himself on fire, which is why he had no shirt on, and then he had to take his shirt off. I mean, just think about this real quick. If this had to happen anywhere else but Boulder, one concealed carry weapons permit would have sorted this out fairly quickly. And we're not talking about that. Now we're probably going to go into the session next year. I'm going to try and ban spray bottles, which is what he was holding, right? Or try and ban fire, for Pete's sake. So this is what keeps happening on and on and on again. Ban the guns, strip the rights from the people, and Democrats remain in charge of all three branches, executive, legislative, and judicial. And as long as that keeps happening, incidents like this, not against the Jews, but this will come against the Judeo-Christian alliance, and Jews and Christians alike will be faced with this type of action.
That's State Representative Ron Weinberg. I've got a question for you, sir. I'm going to ask the question, give you a second to think about it while I talk about the premise for the question. But my question is, the guy that perpetrated the attacks, should he be placed in prison or should he be deported? The reason I asked that is because Donald Trump's administration is talking about deporting the illegal aliens that are criminals out of this country, and we just recently had an example in Denver. It's not going to be done the same way in Boulder, but in Denver, there was a criminal that had killed someone while driving too fast. The Boulder DA said, "Oh, just probation."
Arapahoe County,
Arapahoe County, yeah,
yep.
Sorry, Arapahoe County DA said, "Sorry, just probation. We're going to send you." Then Donald Trump, ICE came in, and they're going to send him back home. Where I was going was, and I was ahead of myself, was in Boulder. We've seen a completely different way of dealing with things like this from both the police chief and also the DA. According to our last guest, George Brauchler, they are going to come correct, and they're going to go after this guy and try to prosecute him to the fullest extent of the law. But Representative Weinberg, should we prosecute this illegal alien criminal, or should we deport him? Your opinion?
That's a great question. You know, first of all, with the police chief not even claiming that this is an act of terror, I haven't heard that yet, which I briefly had a text with him last night and hopefully catch up with him today a little bit. This should be a federal prosecution, in my opinion, just because this gentleman is not a citizen and he's not a resident of Colorado. So this is an odd one. I think he should be prosecuted with our court system as well as deported. I think there's a way that you can get both, get your cake and eat it too. I think we should work and see what the consequences would be for deportation. If he's just going to go back to Egypt and not be behind bars, then I think we've got some serious thinking to do with what are the consequences for these actions.
Well, I think that's
and not even behind bars. I mean, they'll probably throw him a parade.
Yeah, well, he didn't break a law in Egypt per se, because he wasn't in their jurisdiction and he didn't do it there.
And the way they treat Jews.
Yeah,
I mean,
but even then, no more than if you had someone that was convicted of murder in another country, then coming back here, we don't necessarily throw them in jail. So assuming that another country is going to hold our criminals or criminal behavior here accountable doesn't happen. So yeah, that's the thing. So if the feds did convict him, do you think we then put him in prison, Representative Weinberg, or do we just ship him out of here? What's your opinion?
My opinion is this guy needs to face consequences for his actions. So it's a very fair point and a fair question of whether we have American taxpayer dollars funding this guy for the rest of his life in a prison or being celebrated in Egypt. Obviously, from what I want to see actions taken against this individual, and in my opinion, he should never see the light of day.
Or you could get the best of both worlds and fly him back and then kick him out the back of a plane at 35,000 feet. We're talking with Ron Weinberg, State Representative. Ron, I was running the Boulder a week before. It's a 10K, it's 6.2 miles, and throughout the race, there were anti-Israel, pro-Palestine protesters the entire way. Free Palestine, chants like that. And the people that were in the race didn't want to deal with it, in part because they just didn't want to deal with politics. It was like, gosh, we're trying to have fun, and you idiots are up here trying to drive your agenda. No matter where we go, it's always free Palestine, free Palestine, free Palestine. At this point, and I'm not Jewish, Ron, but I want to get your take on this. anytime I hear someone yell Free Palestine, especially after the shooting in Washington, D.C., and now the burning of Jews in Boulder, to me, it's a call for violence. What I hear when I hear people yell Free Palestine is attack the Jews, burn the Jews, shoot the Jews. It is get rid of the Zionists in the Middle East. It is laden with vitriol and calls for violence at this point. Your response, sir?
You know, in the Jewish religion, we look at everything as it's happening for a reason, that God is ultimately in charge, and that things are going on for some sort of master plan. And, you know, just noticing since October 7th on how the Jewish people here in Colorado that are primarily Democrats, which for me is ludicrous. I don't understand how any individual with Jewish heritage could be a Democrat. I that is beyond me. So I'm seeing the shift now ever since October 7th, and with incidents like yesterday and everything else that's transpired for the past 3 years, is that I see the Jewish heritage of Colorado actually shifting into more of the middle, coming back saying, hey, you know, maybe conservatives have a thing here, and maybe they have a point. And they're recognizing, I think, that the Judeo-Christian alliance is so vital and important. You know, thank God that we have Christianity as our shield. I'll tell you honestly, it's how many pastors and everybody else that's reached out since yesterday, or anytime any incident happens, Jeff, including you, like, you know, for me personally, I'm seeing the shift of Jews actually seeing the writing on the wall and who is actually going to be their shield. And I think everything's happening for a reason, and I'm truly seeing a shift to seeing what the ludicrous left is actually up to and who we really need to rely on to fall back on.
Well, and this is important. I want to remind all of our conservative friends and our Christian friends, you do not have America without the great traditions we get from our Jewish brothers and sisters. Okay, I want to take you back to Moses, right, leaving the Egypt, and that notion of human freedom that didn't exist. That didn't exist prior to Moses and the Jews and the Israelites leaving Egypt. So that call of freedom, right? Then you get the 10 Commandments and the idea of an organized structure around our laws and the idea that there's one God that we're all accountable to. That comes from our Jewish traditions. That inspired common law and the traditions that came through Western civilization. So you don't get Western civilization, you don't get America, you don't get all of that we hold dear without the great traditions we inherited from our Jewish friends. So when you see these attacks, whether it's coming from radical Islam or the attacks coming from the Marxists on our college campuses, they're not just attacking Jews, they're attacking all of us who embrace Western civilization. Understand that. Stand with your Jewish friends. Pray for them. Advocate for them. They feel alone right now on the world stage. I mean, if you go to the United Nations, for instance, that's a disgusting anti-Semitic place. So recognize what's happening. Understand the threats that are out there and support our Jewish friends. Ron Weinberg, I'm so sorry for what you guys have to deal with yet again, but I sure do hope that things are changing. And I do hope that Jared Polis, Phil Weiser, Michael Bennett, Jenna Griswold, the Jewish leaders within the Democrat Party here in Colorado root out this anti-Semitism within their own party, so you never have to deal with what you dealt with at the state legislature again. So, sir, thank you for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill show this morning.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate you guys very much as always.
Again, Ron Weinberg, state representative. All right. I want to talk next with Chase Davis. He's a pastor up in Boulder as to what he's seeing and hearing from the community he directly ministers into and the challenges his Jewish friends are facing up in Boulder. We'll talk with Chase Davis next. I want to talk first L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. Our AC went out last fall, and typically, or last summer, when your AC goes out, that line gets all frozen. Well, you have bigger issues than just the air conditioner. Sometimes it can just be a pump issue, but in our case, the builder grade furnace that was put into our house just wasn't keeping up with a family of 6 and all the demands on us. So we needed to improve it. We went out and spoke with a number of different HVAC companies, chose L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. These folks are great. It's a small mom and pop operation, so you get personal service. Like, you can call them on your cell phone. They'll show up on the weekend to help you. This isn't one of those big operations that's going to nickel and dime you, especially if you have an emergency. In fact, they have no emergency charges and $0 trip fee. Absolutely loved working with L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. Our home, totally comfortable no matter what the weather. We got peace of mind with L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. Here's the deals they have currently. Free programmable thermostat and carbon monoxide detector with new furnace and air conditioner installation. No emergency charges. As I mentioned, $0 trip fee, price match value guarantee on equipment. So no matter what you find out there, they'll be able to price match it. They can work with any AC unit that you want. We got Bryant installed. They're doing great work. They're licensed and insured, and they have a 5-year labor warranty. Everything works great. Our family couldn't be happier. So if you're looking for fast, honest, reliable service, I highly recommend L&L Heating and Air Conditioning, 720-851-1691. Online at bestdenverhvac.com, bestdenverhvac.com. I'm sure glad we called him. That number again, 720-851-1691. All right, we'll continue. Pastor Chase Davis coming up next. You're listening to Jeff and Bill Show.
This is the Denver Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. A hard day here in Colorado. Yesterday, as the New York Times reports, 8 burned in an attack at a Colorado event honoring Israeli hostages. Part of the challenge in covering this event is this happens over the course of a Jewish holiday. 48 hours or so where our Jewish friends that are observant generally are pulling back from media engagement, definitely political engagement, spending time with their families. And so to talk with folks that are directly affected, like the Jewish community in Boulder, is a little bit of a challenge. But I know a great pastor who works up there and can give us some insight into kind of how Boulder might be responding to this, people impacted, as well as just what the scene is like in Boulder. Because as I mentioned, I was up there running the Boulder a week ago, and it was Free Palestine stuff everywhere. And so you end up in this weird city where you have rainbow flags everywhere, and then you have Palestinian flags everywhere. And those culturally don't mix. I don't know if you know this about the Palestinians, but they're not big fans of gay pride. And so I remember interviewing in Chicago this Queers for Palestine. I'm like, so if they get power, what happens to people like you? So to give us some insight on Boulder, what's happening in Boulder, is Chase Davis. He's the pastor of the Weld Church up there. Good morning, Chase. Thanks for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, good morning.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
A hard day for the residents of Boulder, I imagine. Well, let's walk through, first of all, what happened to you yesterday. Is you finished your church services, and then about 1 or 2 o'clock, you start hearing words about a terrorist attack that's taking place in the community you're ministering to. Give us some insight on what life was like as a pastor yesterday.
Yeah, it was a pretty shocking event. I mean, thankfully, most of the kind of church activities had kind of at least shut down for the day. We had an evening service yesterday night. But, I mean, obviously gruesome. I think it was, in a place like Boulder, which is very much like a bubble, where people kind of live, like you alluded to, kind of in a fantasy land of any kind of leftist ideology, whether it's, the rainbow flag or Free Palestine, anything like that. There's a disgruntlement in the city. You saw several people being interviewed on the street that remarked on how the city's kind of gone downhill. You have I have people visiting all the time into our church, into Boulder, and they reflect upon how many homeless encampments there are and what they're going to do about it. Downtown, the business owners are very kind of upset with the local policies that are being placed. I was speaking to several business owners yesterday that have businesses on Pearl Street. And it was kind of this weird thing because Boulder is a tourist town, college town, and you had people, it was just so unexpected there. I think if this happened in a place like Denver, I think a lot of people might go like, well, that tracks for what we've seen in Denver. But in Boulder, this is really surprising for people. And people are just kind of milling about, going about their day. So you had this, what I believe is being called a terrorist attack, this gruesome, brutal attack, being right at the courthouse, right downtown. Our church has held Easter egg hunts there on the Saturday before Easter for several years. And this illegal immigrant, just went and attacked people, Jewish people. And so you had people that were just kind of milling about, like didn't know what was going on. And you had evacuations. There was still uncertainty late into the day as far as if there was another suspect. Were there devices of some sort? Bombs that they were searching for. They shut down a lot of Pearl Street. There were employees that were confused because people were still coming in the stores. And so it was just very confusing. And it really took off nationally, I think, because it's so shocking, because Boulder is so sheltered. A lot of people call them limousine liberals. And that's where I minister. And so you're having to deal with questions about, what does this mean for a Christian response? What is a Christian response to a tragedy like this? We should always respond like Christ in any kind of situation, particularly in situations like this. And we should share the good news of Jesus Christ with people and point people to the hope that we have in Christ. And so it's a lot of that kind of ministry, but also not ignoring the fact that, yesterday my phone was kind of blowing up. Our local pastors, evangelical pastors, were praying. We were talking to one another. I think a lot of people are going to want to chalk this up to, just a one-off event or a certain, anti-Semitism or something like that. And it was that. But I think the broader thing that we need to talk about is kind of the illegal immigration issue and how this would have never occurred if this man had been, removed from the country when he should have been. And so there's a lot going on. Details are still coming out, but it really took off nationally. And so very upsetting, very disturbing. It's a city that has experienced many tragedies. I've been here since when the floods happened in 2013, to the shooting at King Soopers, to the fires that took out so many homes. And so it's a city that's been through a lot of tragedy. And so it's hard. And hopefully the opportunity to minister, we were provided that. We don't wish for any kind of tragedy on anyone like this, but we're ready to meet it with the gospel.
That's Chase Davis. He's a pastor of the Weld Church, which is in Boulder. Pastor, what are you hearing from other religious leaders about how to support Jews in this time of attack and persecution? I mean, whether it's Washington, D.C., where they're openly shot, or Boulder, where they're burned alive, to be a Jew out in public right now is to face direct persecution, direct threats on your lives. We've talked to Jewish leaders. We just interviewed one right before you jumped on here about the importance of supporting them through this time. When you have the rise of anti-Semitism, you have Marxist ideologies on college campuses that are directly intimidating Jews. How important is it for Christians to stand alongside Jews against this type of harassment?
Well, any kind of harassment like that's not what we want in America. That's not what we stand for as Americans. You see this, you saw it, like you said, at Columbia, at Harvard recently. I think it was Harvard Law, where a lot of the students were holding up the kind of the Free Palestine, Liberate Palestine stuff, which is just, it's insane, to be quite frank. It's insane. This once kind of Puritan founded, at the time, a training school for pastors has now become a cesspool of leftist ideology. And thankfully, it looks like Trump's going after places like Harvard, but I think CU needs to take a hard look in the mirror about how they foster this kind of stuff in their own community, and how they kind of tolerate this kind of hatred. When any kind of stuff was happening in 2020 or other places, Boulder is generally sheltered from it, like I said, because it's kind of its own bubble. But it's going to be really important for Christians to speak the truth plainly, and to give people the hope of Jesus Christ, and to really assess the situation with a sober mind. The temptation for Christians is going to be to kind of what we call Jesus juke it. To that we mean just kind of like say some prayers and maybe like give them a hug or offer support, and that's good. Like, of course, as a pastor, everyone should be praying to the Lord God, Jesus Christ. But at the same time, we need to soberly assess like how this came about and why this is happening. And that's going to mean having some hard conversations about how in the church we've kind of let our guard down and failed to speak plainly about the issue of illegal immigration, about Islamic terrorism that's been going on for a long time. And so we need to just speak plainly from the Bible about not only the hope of Jesus, but the ramifications of kind of radical Islamic illegal immigrants in our country.
And I've spent time with Palestinian protesters 4 days at the Chicago DNC, where they were very clear. They were open. Like, I'm not making this up. Like, the point was Islamic domination. Like, what are you doing here? Well, our plan is to take over Israel and then put the entire world under Islamic domination, which their strategy plan is Middle East, North Africa, down through Southern Africa, then through Europe, Western Europe, which they're actually getting quite a good stronghold on, then into the United States, China, Russia. But they want total domination of the entire world with the Islamic worldview. And when you bring it up, you're like, oh, you're making things up. I'm like, these are literally the people out protesting that I've talked to and said that, and they told me Christians and Jews will be second-class citizens in their world. And when we try to bring that up, you're mocked as an extremist or you're hateful. I'm like, no, this is what they are saying themselves. So I think it's important to take that into consideration. But I'm fascinated by the progressive world that holds these two things that are diametrically opposed to each other together. So they'll stand and yell Free Palestine and carry rainbow flags And if those were either of those ever to get total control, neither of them could operate, right? So if you're in an LGBTQ world, for instance, let's say they have total control of the government. Well, they're not allowing Christians or Muslims to be able to live out their faith. We see that in Colorado when, Jack Phillips, Lori Smith, Idra Haji, they're all suing for the right to be able to practice their faith, so that doesn't work. If you go to an Islamic world, well, then there's definitely no LGBTQ. So you minister in Boulder, in progressive land, where the same side is carrying these two flags. What is going on? Help me to understand it.
Well, the left is a hodgepodge of kind of neo-Marxist ideology. And so they're reaching the end of their ability to hold up this facade of coexistence. Coexistence died a long time ago. I don't know if anyone's aware of that. They may still have the sticker on their car, but they're not interested in coexistence. And so they're just kind of picking up pieces where they can out of kind of this oppressor framework. And we all know that's not possible. It's most prominent in the kind of transgender ideology, particularly women in sports. A lot of even gays are turning against that. And so there's infighting because it's an inconsistent kind of worldview. And as Christians, we have answers. We can address these matters plainly from Scripture. We can show you how the legalization of gay marriage, then 5 years later, it seemed like even a shorter time frame, we've got kids becoming trans. All this kind of stuff is social contagion. And so as Christians, we have the great opportunity to, as their ideology falls apart, and as they kind of come to this realization of hey, this isn't good. The policies I've supported isn't good. Just on a practical level, you can meet them with the Bible. And so you can share from the Bible about matters of sexuality or anything else to speak plainly of the hope we have in Jesus Christ. And so it's, on the one hand, a lot of people look at Boulder as like you've talked about, it's kind of like the most progressive place in Colorado, no doubt, that's not in question. But a lot of people are just kind of picking up on these progressive causes, not out of a sense of kind of being an ideologue, like there's some academic that studied neo-Marxism, but just kind of, it's the soup du jour. It's just well, I guess we support Palestine now. But at the end of the day, they realize there's some deep inconsistency there. And like you've mentioned, in Boulder, there is a big Jewish community. And so that's why we haven't seen a lot of the Free Palestine stuff blow up as much in Boulder, because there is a lot of Jewish influence in Boulder. And so we have the opportunity as Christians to then offer the hope of Jesus Christ, talk about the Bible, speak plainly. And as people's kind of lives fall apart, world falls apart, and their conception of who should we celebrate, and like you pointed out, these radically inconsistent ideologies, we can go, hey, we actually have answers. And so that's our hope. And we've seen that. We've seen lots of people, whether it's Jews or Muslims or progressives, start to question their own kind of thinking and see the inconsistency of kind of these perspectives. And then Christians have the opportunity to step in and show them not only the kind of the American ideals, what we've kind of held up, not just for the last half century, but from our founding, but also from the Bible and where those derive from, because this was once a Christian country. And so we want to be here to minister to people, to share the hope of the gospel with people. And it's a great opportunity. As Christians, not everyone is called to a place like Boulder. That's fine. But we know that the light shines brightest in the darkness. And so we want to do that not only in tragedy, but in places that are kind of perceived to be held captive by worldly ideologies and demonic forces. And we want to go into that with the hope of the gospel, not boasting in ourselves, but boasting in Jesus Christ and offering people the good news of Jesus. And so it's kind of like this, why wouldn't you do ministry here? But I understand that's it seems crazy to some people, but there's just so much opportunity. There's so many people. It's like they put a bunch of lost people in one town, and it's just like, hey, we can go there. We have freedoms as Americans to go and minister there. So as long as we can, we'd like to try that and do that. And thus far, for 14 years, we've seen God do a wonderful work at our church in Boulder.
And how often how are you received when you do your ministry work in Boulder?
Well, yeah, you're going to get the radical left that's going to attack us and slander us and attack anyone affiliated with our church. And they do that through various outlets, op-eds or whatever. So you'll get some
Channel
who
9.
call us names and that kind of thing. But in general, people are kind of like, hey, they're just like normal Christians. Isn't this what normal Christians believe? In fact, that's one thing I noticed early on, Jeff, when we started our church in Boulder and started ministering in Boulder, is we had a lot of visitors from the city who were either nominally Christian or not Christian, and they found it really refreshing that we were just like, hey, yeah, we don't believe in that. We're Christians. And they were like, thank you for actually like owning what you actually believe about whether it's like abortion or gay marriage or anything like that. Whereas they're used to evangelicals kind of doing this shadow game, this kind of like, oh, no, we're tolerant, inclusive, just like you. And it's like, no, we have a different perspective on these matters because we base our faith on the Bible. And so, you'll see kind of attacks like our church building was vandalized as soon as we bought it in Boulder. You'll see lies and hit pieces published about us, people calling for us to be boycotted, all that kind of stuff. But, most people who kind of see how the left operates, they're going like, hey, like that's insane. These people are just normal Christians. And, they're not maybe your kind of vanilla evangelicals who are going to kind of soft pedal things about Christianity. We're going to be very honest about what we believe, and we're going to teach it from the Bible. But these are just normal Christians. So there's a bit of a duplicity there because, for most people outside of Boulder, they perceive Boulder as like leftist controlled, and it is. Leftist ideology controls the town and how they operate. With that said, it's not like the majority of the population. The majority of the population of Boulder are just rich white people who just want to enjoy their lives. Have a latte at the local hipster coffee shop with a rainbow flag and just kind of go along to get along. It's very libertarian. Leave me alone. Let me enjoy my wealth and my hikes and my travel and my tech and all that kind of stuff. And so there's a lot of reasonable people here who may not be Christians yet, but they're very open to discuss such matters. Unfortunately, the radical left is very loud and they're very intolerant, it turns out, in terms of like if you break from their own worldview, they're going to come down on you. And so I think a lot of people are kind of waking up to that. And so we've seen a lot of people kind of come to their senses, and hopefully that creates more gospel opportunities for us.
That's Chase Davis. He's a pastor at the Weld Church in Boulder. That's the exact dynamic that I was talking about. Was you're running the Boulder. It's so fun. It's entertaining. They got trampolines. They've got slip and slides. It's quirky, weird Boulder that everybody loves. Meanwhile, I've got to deal with these Free Palestine protesters constantly in my ear. Even the Boulder residents are tired of it. They didn't want to deal with it anymore. But that progressivism has opened the door for this radical leftism that's anti-Semitic that's taken hold, and the result, you have 8 elderly Jewish people burned yesterday in Boulder. It's got to be addressed, and it's got to be addressed by the people from Boulder that don't want to deal with this anti-Semitic crap anymore. Chase, thank you for your ministry up there in Boulder. It's not easy, but you're just the guy to do it. Chase Davis, pastor of the Weld Church. Give him a follow on X. Chase, what's your handle on X again?
Chase Davis, and you can always visit our website for our church, boulderwell.org.
That's great. Thank you so much, Chase. We'll continue. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're covering it end to end today. All the latest details, too. 8 burned in an attack at Colorado event honoring Israeli hostages. 2 victims were airlifted to a burn unit with serious injuries. Suspects in custody. This happened yesterday afternoon on Pearl Street Mall. There's in Pearl Street Mall, as you know, you can't drive down. So this guy, Mohammed Sabri Solomon from Egypt, not supposed to be here, by the way, overstaying his visa, drives from Colorado Springs with a makeshift flamethrower. I think it was like a weed sprayer, it looks like.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
And then Ron Weinberg told us, state representative, that he burns himself and takes it off. That's why he's shirtless in all these videos. Then starts throwing Molotov cocktails at elderly Jews. And my conversation with Chase and everybody, at least this hour, was, what the hell happened to Boulder? I mean, my dad went to CU in the 60s, used to work at the sink, right? His quirky hippie world. And still, in many ways, is. We ran the Boulder, 6 miles of jumping on trampolines and doing slip and slides and eating hot dogs, cotton candy. And you're now lighting Jews on fire. And I think this is something that Boulder's got to deal with themselves. And I think when people show up and go, free Palestine from the river to the sea, I think you need to shout them down. Tell them to get the hell out of here. You're not going to deal with it anymore. I don't know. It's heartbreaking, man.
Yeah, it is.
Because I like quirky Boulder. You know, it's fun. My kids had a fun time. Not dealing with this crap up there, but, you know, like, I think you got to come to terms. Like the leadership of Boulder, the liberal, progressive community leaders, got to end this stuff. No more from the river to the sea. My thoughts. In the 9 o'clock hour, Danielle Jurinsky, Jewish leader down here in Aurora, is going to give us some thoughts, and then we'll get into the global intifada with a smart international man. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
KNUS.
Well, it's 9 o'clock Mountain Time in the Mile High City on this Monday, June 2nd, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. Very sad day in Colorado as 8 are burned in an attack at a Colorado event honoring Israeli hostages. A group of elderly, no one under the age of 60, all the way up to mid-80s, gather on the Pearl Street Mall yesterday to raise awareness about the hostages that were taken by Hamas on October 7th in that terrorist attack. They wear red. They speak the name of the hostages. They sometimes sing. They return every Sunday to the same place. Continue. Some murderer is the best way to describe a terrorist. Mohammed Sabri Solomon, 45 years old, drives up from Colorado Springs with a makeshift flamethrower on his back and starts trying to light Jews on fire. When he burns himself, he takes off the flamethrower and starts throwing Molotov cocktails. One of these folks is a Holocaust survivor. Could you imagine surviving the Holocaust, to move to Colorado, to live in Boulder, and to have some radical Islamist who shouldn't even be in this country? He had overstayed his visa. He's now an illegal immigrant. Try to burn you alive? Steve Miller is saying that this suicidal immigration that's taking place, which it is with guys like this, needs to stop. Mohammed Solomon needs to get out of here. Well, first prosecutor. Latest coming from Blake Olson, and then we're going to get to Danielle Jurinsky and then Dr. James Robbins on a little bit later. So now is your latest news and comment. Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning. It's 64 and partly cloudy in Denver. Expecting a high of 82 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story.
Everything that they do in that chamber is literally the precursor to this. This guy was an illegal immigrant who overstayed his visa. The governor just passed or signed a law expanding Colorado to be a sanctuary state for illegal immigrants.
Colorado Rep. Ron Weinberg, who's Jewish, on the show last hour discussing the terrorist attack on a small group of elderly Jews in Boulder on Pearl Street. A Holocaust survivor was reportedly among the injured Sunday. Solomon's an illegal alien from Egypt who's overstayed his visa. Mohammed Solomon, thanks to the Biden administration. And Weinberg says, hey, you get what you vote for, and that's what we are seeing here in Colorado.
We're just setting ourselves up for this, and then literally coming out and writing statements of, oh, we're truly saddened by what happened and blah, 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 blah. Can we empower our law enforcement to talk to federal agencies so that we can get these criminals off of our streets? Can we please put the Colorado citizens first, for Pete's sake? Because this is just the beginning. This is happening to Jews. Wait till it happens to everybody in the state. If everyone thinks that it's only going to be Jews at the end of the day that's going to be hurt of this, it's not. It's going to be people in Colorado. We need to get these Democrats out of office. We need to get a new governor in next year. And we need to put our law enforcement back in charge of our streets.
Solomon is in custody and possibly facing murder charges after setting his victims on fire with a makeshift flamethrower. At least 8 people wounded, and 2 were airlifted to the hospital for treatment of severe burns. It took place during a weekly gathering of individuals just walking together to demonstrate solidarity with hostages still held in Gaza by Hamas. DA from Judicial District 23, George Brauchler, on the show as well.
This thing's ready to blow. So if more and more things like this happen, I think our focus has to be to make a big public deal out of, and of course these guys are going to get their due process, but of vigorously prosecuting them with every tool at our disposal. And then if we're able to secure a conviction at trial, to make it a big public deal. We got to send a message.
And the media worldwide should be sending a message also, but they've been played. Joy Hoffman, a Jewish leader in the state, on with Jeff and Billy this morning.
I think the problem is that there are a lot of places where the volume is so much louder than people like you or me or my daughter or my nieces and nephews and so on, and we're drowned out. It's a desire to hate somebody for a reason that isn't understood, but has been bought and paid for by very, very clever people who have played the Western media. And when I say Western, I include Europe as well, because there were riots and burning in Paris yesterday as well.
Yes, there were. It was ugly in Paris, in France, all weekend. Riots, flames, fires, civil unrest, immigrants who don't wish to assimilate and hate French, Jews, Christians, Catholics, all the infidels. Hey, CNN's Harry Enton says it's official. The numbers don't lie. Republicans are the party of the middle class, not the lefty lunatics.
But by this decade, we already started seeing declines back in 2022, where you saw that Democrats led, but only by 4 points, well within the margin of error. And now in our latest CNN poll among registered voters, which is the party of the middle class, it is tied. This, I think, speaks to Democratic ills more than anything else. They have traditionally been the party of the middle class. No more. Donald Trump and the Republican Party have taken that mantle away, and now a key advantage for Democrats historically has gone adios amigos, and now there is no party that is the party of the middle class. Republicans have completely closed the gap.
A teenage girl is dead, and one is suffering from serious injuries after a shooting in Aurora last night. Aurora police said a third victim was grazed by a bullet. It happened near Hoffman Park at a fire station parking lot. Police are investigating. Ukraine's security service carried out a massive drone strike that destroyed at least 40 Russian bombers. The operation involved smuggling drones well into Russia over an 18-month period. And the EU and NATO just love it, trying to keep this war alive as DJT's envoy trying to end the war. Rockies fall to the Mets 5-3. And in case you've lost track, the Rocks are 9-50 in Miami today at 4:40 first pitch. And state of Washington, 2A track meet, 400 meters. The girl who actually won it, well, she was, of course, she is in second place. She finished second because a biological male won it. For the female. For the males, for the females. Okay, I'm confused. Here it is.
Lauren Matthews.
Now, that was the name of the girl who should have won it. Second place. Now, listen to them announce the winner of the state championship 2A 400 meters.
And first place, your 2025 winner, in a time of 55.70 from East Valley of Spokane, Veronica Garcia.
And there you have it.
More of this, all day of this.
Yep. That's right. More of that. More, I wish DJT, we've talked about this before, but I wish he would take every runner-up that lost to a male and bring him into the White House and give him a special trophy or medal or whatever. This is disgusting. And the one in California is just out of control. We got this girl says she's queer. I don't know if I have it here. She says she's queer and she's supporting her, even though I forget what his name is. But he should not be competing with the girls, and he did anyway in California. Here, let's listen.
They gave me the medal I deserved. They gave her the medal that she deserved, and sharing the podium was nothing but an honor.
Oh my goodness, really? Okay, she
As a part of the queer community, like, I want A.B. Hernandez to know that we all have her back and we all have her support. Although the publicity she's receiving has been pretty negative, I believe she deserves publicity because she is a superstar. She's a rock star. She's representing who she is. And to be up there with her, like, that was amazing for me, honestly. Yeah, I'm really.
She's a boy, all right?
Right.
God, I am so sick and tired of this. There were 5 or 6 that received medals all over the country. Whatever. So you're just going to keep on doing that, stripping girls' opportunities away from them. It's horrible. 62 in Arvada, 63 in Aurora, 64 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue on Monday. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
A Pacific trough of low pressure, a cool front, and abundant moisture will mean an active day of showers and thunderstorms along the Front Range and eastern plains of Colorado. Might have a few strong to severe thunderstorms through evening. Highs today low 80s, lows tonight upper 40s, with afternoon and evening showers and thunderstorms. Much cooler tomorrow. Lingering shower and thunderstorm chances, highs Tuesday only near 60. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're getting reaction from Colorado's leaders on what happened yesterday in Boulder. 8 burned in an attack at a Colorado event honoring Israeli hostages. Lit on fire. You have Jews shot in public. You have Jews lit on fire in public. And what I want to get to at the end of this show is no more of the chanting of Free Palestine, no more of the chanting of From the River to the Sea. These are calls to violence. And people need to condemn it, end it, no more. Give us some insight. Very good friend of the show, doing a wonderful job in the city of Aurora, Danielle Jurinsky. Good morning, Danielle. I am so sorry that, again, Jews are being targeted.
Yeah.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me, guys. This is, to see something like this, and the man drove all the way up from Colorado Springs. He was apparently living in Colorado Springs and decided to drive to Boulder with Molotov cocktails to set people on fire who are peacefully protesting the release of any remaining hostages in Gaza. This has gone so far beyond any type of sanity. I mean, there's no. You can't put words to this. And the number, you had 8 people. You had 8 people peacefully protesting the release of the remaining hostages in Gaza. God willing, any of them are alive. And you're seeing thousands come out, screaming Free Palestine and Intifada and all this and that. And it's almost as if society has made this the norm. And society is electing people, putting people in office who are supporting this. And shame on Jared Polis, Jenna Griswold, Michael Bennett, Phil Weiser. Shame on every single one of you who have made the Democratic Party your religion over God, over Judaism. You put up statements that you're closely monitoring the situation. You should be demanding action. They want you dead too. A dead Jew to them is a win. It doesn't matter if it's a Republican Jew like myself or a Democratic Jew like Phil Weiser. We should be united. And they are closely monitoring. Just weeks ago, Jared Polis came out and he's protecting these illegals. First of all, Jared Polis, you are protecting people that you don't even know who's here, because our border was open for damn near 4 years. You don't know who's in this country. And you're going to give them a blanket welcome, a blanket protection to what? Murder, rape, kidnap, burn human beings? Shame on you. You're not Jewish. You're a Democrat.
I'm going to let that sit right there. Wow. Danielle Jurinsky, city councilwoman, with very strong words for the Democrat leadership here in Colorado. Danielle, what do you want to see from Jared Polis? What do you want to see from Phil Weiser, Michael Bennett, Jenna Griswold? What steps do they need to take today and in the coming weeks to address what's happening to Jews in Colorado?
Well, first and foremost, they need to attend whatever synagogue is nearest to them, because I'm certain none of them actually pay membership dues and belong to a synagogue. But first and foremost, and I welcome them, I will go sit side by side with them in synagogue, and they need to pray. They need to pray. That's first and foremost. They need God, and this country needs God. Second, I cannot wait to see Jared Polis leave this state next year. I cannot wait. But look who's coming up right behind him. Phil Weiser and Michael Bennett. Shame on them too. Shame on them too. I hope to see any of them in synagogue. Any of them. This state had better wake up. The Jews in this state had better wake up. Jenna Griswold, you're a crook. You're a crook. You need more than God in your life. Yeah, I am so disgusted. This could be me. This could be my family. This could be my friends, all simply because we're Jewish. And they're closely monitoring. Now, let me tell you something. I've been in office for almost 4 years, and I've been through a lot of shit. And I'm going to say that with emphasis, shit. And nothing brings me to tears like this than watching Jews put their dedication to a demonic cult, the Democratic Party, which has made crime legal, murder legal, rape legal. We have 325,000 missing children at the border, and they don't care. They don't speak out about this. A Holocaust survivor was burned yesterday, survived the Holocaust and burned. And they're closely monitoring the situation. Shame on you. Shame on you, from one Jew to another. Shame on you. Go to synagogue and pray. You had better be on your knees praying to God for forgiveness for your behavior, because you're not just anti-American. You yourselves are anti-Semitic.
I think you see here the real passion.
And I appreciate what the councilwoman is saying about, this is Danielle Jurinsky joining Jeff and Bill live, and she's giving voice to a lot of our emotions, and I think it's a lot of what we've been talking here at the show about, that too many people are allowing their politics to determine their truth. And that's exactly what Danielle is calling Governor Polis, Phil Weiser, Jenna Griswold, and more on the carpet for doing. Exactly. That when they saw, in my opinion, when they saw or heard about the horrific attack in Boulder, they ran this through a filter of, I'm a Democrat, rather than running through a filter of, I'm Jewish and I'm also human. they had to approach this tragedy through being a Democrat first. And she is 110% right about the weak and feckless calls at the beginning, how they are monitoring the situation. As DA Brauchler joined us earlier and outlines that he will give the police chief, Redfern, a little bit of space as far as him not declaring it a terrorist attack immediately, only because he's not elected. He's an employee of the city, and he said there are some different requirements there on him coming out right away and calling it a terrorist attack simply because of how the position sits. That's not necessarily his role to say it there officially, because it can cross some wires and make things more difficult to prosecute the case later on. He said, while difficult, that's probably what Redfern should have done. But that doesn't excuse any of the other lawmakers. And I appreciate Danielle's emotion, vitriol, and anger, because we all feel it. Because this has pulled off the bandage, and it's exactly what Jeff and I have been saying for over a year. There are way too many people, especially many Democrats, that are using their politics to determine their truth. That you can see from the responses, even from Jason Crow, that this ran through politics first, and then they decided how they were going to respond, rather than responding as a member of the community, rather than responding as a member of the faith, rather than responding as a Christian who supports our Jewish brothers and sisters, or rather than responding simply as a human who sees these attacks as untenable. Yeah, I appreciate that. That's
Danielle, I want to ask you, as a Jewish woman, when you see people chant "Free, free Palestine" and "From the river to the sea," how does that make you feel?
Oh, I mean, it's stated in that they can mask this however they want, Jeff. They want to see dead Jews. They want to see dead Jews. They don't want a two-party state solution. They want all of Israel. They want to see dead Jews. Jews somehow seem to get blamed for many, 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 many things, and we have throughout history. We've always overcame, and come back stronger. But what it means is death to Jews, and somehow society has accepted this. And somehow on these college campuses, it's been made cool. It's been made a club. It's been made a cult. From the river to the sea. What does that mean? That means all of Israel. That's what that means. And these kids walking around. And then I talk to elderly folks. I talk to elderly Jews. And I say, you must talk to your grandchildren. You must educate them. And they're scared. They're scared that they're going to lose their grandkids. They say, my grandkids will stop speaking to me. They'll stop speaking to me. This is what has happened to our kids, to our college students, the elder generations. When I was young, I would sit and I would listen to my grandfather, a 3-time war hero, Vietnam, Korea, and World War II. And I would sit and I would listen to my elder, and I would listen to his stories, and I would take all of that in. And it made me proud. It made me proud to be his granddaughter. It made me proud to be an American. It just filled me with pride. And now we have grandparents that are scared to talk to their grandchildren because these universities, these teachers' unions, these schools have made them so angry, so filled with hate. And make no mistake of it, these chants, they want dead Jews. If you ask them, from the river to the sea, well, what does that mean for the Israelis? What does that mean for the Jews in Israel? Then where do they go? What do you think their answer will be? They don't care. To hell will be their answer. They blame us for everything. They say we're a sickness. They call us names. They call us Jewish pigs. They want us dead. They want us dead. And you have Jews. You have Jews who are so power hungry. And I understand my whole family used to be registered Democrats, to include my father. And he may not be thrilled that I say that, but under the Clinton administration, he registered as a Republican. And this was a thing during World War II. The Democrats got the credit, right? Which I still would argue against, because it took way too long for the United States to join the Second World War and save Jews. So I would still argue against that. But coming out of World War II, the Democrats got the kudos for saving the Jews that they did. So that's where this mindset comes from. But it is time to change this mindset. And it is time for the elders to speak up. We cannot be scared. A scared Jew at this point is a dead Jew. A scared Jew is a dead Jew. And if we do not speak up, and if we do not learn how to shoot guns, and if we do not familiarize ourselves with self-protection and the protection of our families, they want us dead. Jewish people make up 0.02% of the entire world's population. That's it. That's it. And who's coming to save us? Now, Christians have come out and marched alongside us. Other people have come out. But you see these massive pro-Palestinian protests. And you have BLM is jumping on. LGBTQIA+ is jumping on. Teachers unions are jumping on. Every abortion rights activists are jumping on. Who is jumping on to save the Jews? I'll tell you who. It's God. And that is why I tell every Jewish elected official that is a Democrat that doesn't stand up for this, I better see you in synagogue, and I better see you on your knees praying to God.
That's Danielle Jurinsky, City Councilwoman from Aurora. And I hope we all heard the direct shot to the heart that is taking place as a result of these attacks. And she perfectly laid out exactly what I wanted to get across today, is that there is a direct line. There's a direct line from the river to the sea and free Palestine chants to the shooting of Jews in broad daylight and the burning of Jews in broad daylight. And those people chanting that, making those claims, need to be confronted for what they're really calling for and the result of their rhetoric, which is direct attacks on Jews. Danielle, I know this is incredibly emotional. You are very brave, and you have communicated a lot to all of us today. Yeah. Thank you for taking time to join us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you both so much. Have a great day.
You too. We'll continue to pray and stand with our Jewish friends, and look forward to Danielle joining us again. She's a wonderful friend of the show. She's doing a hell of a job in Aurora, too.
Yeah, she is.
All right. We're going to take a break. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
710 KNUS.
Wow. Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show.
Wow. She's so strong.
We're going to cut that interview and put it online so you can hear it. Danielle Jurinsky, Aurora City Councilwoman, clearly devastated in light of the attacks that took place in Boulder, what the Jewish community is going through, and a strong internal message. Bill's Roman Catholic, I'm Protestant, but to hear a Jewish leader call out other Jewish leaders for their pathetic statements about monitoring the situation.
Yeah.
When Jews are being lit on fire
and
in their state.
And that's a critique that Jeff and I, being Christians, can't necessarily deliver with the same emotion, with the same energy, because that we're not inside the religion, and it comes off as if we're not criticizing our own. When someone inside the religion says, you're getting your response to this wrong, you're not viewing this as you should as a fellow worshiper, that's powerful. Also, if you missed it, you got to go back and listen to the podcast. You got to share it with friends, because that's a wonderful example why Danielle is so unique in this position. That she is such a treasure for not only Colorado, but for this station, for Aurora.
Honest.
Yeah, that's the part. How many times are you going to get a lawmaker, doesn't matter, party regardless, to be that open, that honest, and she is going to tell you how she sees it and how it hits. She's amazing, and we cannot thank her enough. That was incredible.
We're going to pivot here. Thank you, Danielle. Pivot to, are these attacks part of a larger general increase in political violence? Joining us now is Dr. Jim Robbins of the Institute of World Politics, who's looking at not just this attack, but what happened to Josh Shapiro's residence with Molotov cocktails, the bombing outside the fertility clinic in Palm Springs, the truck ramming attack by an ISIS supporter over New Year's Eve. All of this is a part of a larger trend. He joins us now. Good morning, Dr. Robbins. Thank you for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, guys.
Well, it's a hard day in Colorado today in light of the attacks that took place. We're so grateful that you're taking time to join us. So, from your analysis, what's happening with the rise of these attacks?
Well, I'd like to amplify what you said earlier about a direct line between some of the rhetoric we've been hearing recently and these acts of violence. You can't have people out chanting, as you said, from the river to the sea, or intifada revolution without something happening. These college kids who are out there talking about intifada, I don't even know if they know what that is, but it was a 5-year uprising of domestic terrorism in Israel in which 1,000 people were killed by Palestinian terrorists. So when they say globalize the intifada, that's exactly what we're seeing. That means bring the terrorism to the United States. And so in this attack and in the attack here in Washington a couple weeks ago, that's exactly what we're seeing.
That's Dr. Jim Robbins with the Institute of World Politics. So what would you like to see political leaders do in light of this? For instance, Danielle Jurinsky, who joined us, Jewish woman, city councilwoman here in Aurora, frustrated with the kind of, we're monitoring the situation, or the condemn hate in general, right? You see the SPLC list that lumps anybody who's, right of Karl Marx onto a hate list. But what's the best way to respond to this violence that's taking place, you think?
Well, I think we need to see a little more moral leadership amongst the people, particularly progressives. I mean, people on the left. I don't want to stigmatize a group, but it's important to understand that the rise in violence and the rise in support for political violence is coming from the progressive side predominantly. And so it'd be nice to see a little more strong moral leadership on that side denouncing this, not just denouncing acts of violence, but also the hateful rhetoric. And things like these encampments and stuff going on in college campuses. To have that kind of leadership would be, it would be refreshing, number one, but also it's very important to try to tell people, no, it's not okay to talk about these things. It's not okay to incite these things. And a second thing we need is, and I think the FBI is on this now, a lot more attention being paid to the security side, tracking these groups, seeing who's funding them, seeing what they're planning or what they're up to. Now, in both this case and the Washington, D.C. case, and also the New Orleans case, these were like lone wolf attacks. These are the kind of things that you really can't break up, you really can't predict. They're extremely difficult from a law enforcement or a security perspective. But nevertheless, if you take on the climate of hate and the approval of violence that we see growing in this country, I think that would go a long way to stopping future events.
That's Dr. James Robbins. He's the Dean of Academics with the Institute of World Politics. We've had, and I want to bring my colleague on this because he had a really insightful analysis on this, where the left will often look at violence as speech, right? So, for instance, let's take what happened in Seattle and the pastor rally there, and we had Russell Johnson on about this. The mayor's looking at conservative speech, and he'll go, well, your words are violent. Meanwhile, Antifa will attack the event, and he'll go, well, that violence is just speech. So you have this mixing up of violence and speech that takes place on the left. What's your response to that?
Well, there's a tremendous moral confusion in that. And yes, you're right, this happens. Someone uses the wrong pronoun, and it's an act of utter violence. I mean, we've all heard these kinds of arguments, and they're ridiculous. Violence is violence. It doesn't have to happen. And we really have to call out and cut through that. Saying that this like fanatical pro-violence attitude is somehow morally justified because of whatever their cause is. This is very damaging to the fabric of our society, and particularly calling out speech itself as violence, even if it's not even inciting, even if it's just a minor disagreement over policy, to say, oh, that's extreme or that's out of control. The sort of rhetoric of today, whether it's fueled by social media or some other factor, but just the way that rhetoric has kind of spiraled out of control, it's very troubling. You can't have a reasonable conversation about anything anymore because the minute you try to make a point, you're accused of being a terrorist. Well, this was actual terrorism. This is real terrorism. And the more that people downgrade the definition of what terrorism or violence or political violence is, the more of these types of incidents we will see.
You're listening to Dr. James Robbins, Dean of Academics, joining Jeff and Bill live. What I want to follow up on that is a little bit about, I like we've talked about it here on the show, that some speech is equated with violence and some violence is equated with speech. I think one of the things that the Democrats and the liberals get most wrong is the phrase microaggressions, the idea that small little things you say around someone lead to larger aggressions, which again, we all talked about sticks and stones and may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. The guy that showed up in Boulder was using sticks and stones. He was there. He wasn't there to yell at people. He wasn't there to hurt people. But what I want to ask you about, Doctor, is why do you think we see in so many of our politicians the unwillingness to take that moral stand? Danielle Jurinsky was just with us, local city councilwoman, just before you were on with us, and she was taking to task a number of our Democratic leaders because they talked about early on when this attack was going on that they were monitoring, they were looking at it. We already had enough information that this was an attack that had gone on during a peaceful protest that was calling for the release of hostages that were held by Hamas. We knew all of that when these statements were being made, yet the Democrats and the liberals in charge of our state said they were going to be monitoring. In your opinion, why is it so difficult at this point for some of our lawmakers to take that moral stand you were talking about?
Well, you don't see a lot of profiles encouraged these days amongst politicians. I mean, it's just the state of play in politics that people aren't going out there and taking heroic stands. people tend to be party line people. They just go with whatever talking points got sent them by email that morning, and then they go with that. There's not a lot of original thinking or sort of out of the box solutions coming from politicians, I think generally, but especially on the left, where they're very strict about this. If you deviate even a little bit on any of their hot button issues, they kind of drum you out of the party. So, you're not likely to see people saying anything more than monitoring, because then they'll be accused of Islamophobia, which, is kind of the knee-jerk response to any kind of criticism of terrorism that's motivated by that extremist ideology. And, the left really pioneered that type of shutting people down and censorship using that charge. So, yeah, I wouldn't expect them to come out and say anything about it, because then they'll be open to that charge, and this is completely unacceptable in their party's worldview.
And that's why we love Danielle Jurinsky's boldness so much.
Yes.
She joined you right before us. It's one of those few politicians willing to do so. Dr. James Robinson, he's the Dean of Academics with the Institute of World Politics. It's graduate school. If you want to learn more about the Institute of World Politics, go to iwp.edu, iwp.edu, talking to us about this part of a larger problem of politically motivated violence. Dr. Robbins, thank you for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show today.
Yes, thank you, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, we'll continue. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
We are Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Be sure to stick with 710 KNUS throughout the day as we give you the latest on the 8 innocent victims burned in an attack at a Colorado Springs event honoring Israeli hostages. We'll provide news updates, latest breaking news, $10 million bond. So he's not going anywhere. All right, let's talk about our friends at Mountain High Appliance. Yes, Memorial Day is done, but just for a few more days, like 2 more days, you can still save up to $4,300 on KitchenAid appliance packages at Mountain High Appliance. They offer KitchenAid, an iconic brand trusted for over 100 years. Don't wait. These deals won't last. You got about 48 more hours. When you think appliances, think locally owned Mountain High Appliance. $4,300. Save up to $4,300 on KitchenAid appliance packages.
Yeah,
that's
the
amazing.
Mountain High Appliance people know a lot of other rebates and stuff that aren't necessarily advertised all around, and so they can give you the hookup and save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars that most other places can't. The other thing is they'll let you test drive the machines. They have temporary kitchens set up inside of their showroom so you can see what it looks like, and you can actually see, hey, how fast does this thing heat up? How fast these burners really does? Is induction really the thing that I want to go with if I'm replacing my cooktop? So they are going to do you right. They're going to make sure you also save the most amount of money possible. That's not what some of those other bigger box stores are going to do. So if you want to save the most off your replacement appliances for your kitchen and elsewhere in your house, Mountain High Appliance, they're going to do you right. Make sure you check them out.
As we wrap here, if you missed any of this show, this is one that I'll never forget.
Yeah.
Joy Hoffman, Steve Reams, George Brauchler, Ron Weinberg, Chase Davis, Danielle Jurinsky, Jim Robbins, all joined us today. We had Colorado leaders responding to the terrorist attack that took place in Boulder yesterday. Go to 710knus.com to download the podcast. And will you do me a favor, especially all my Christian listeners out there, pray for your Jewish friends and text them and let them know you love them, you're praying for them, and you stand in solidarity with them. That will go a long ways, believe me.
Yeah, also, don't let them say that to the River to the Sea thing anymore. Say, done. We're done with that one.
All right, we'll be back tomorrow. Charlie Kirk's up next. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader. We are 710 KNUS. Have a good day.